Donald Trump has been friends with Jeffrey Epstein for years. In 2002, he told New York Magazine that he's, quote, known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it, Jeffrey enjoys his social life. Close quote. Jeffrey Epstein claimed he introduced Donald Trump to Melania. Epstein is known for grooming beautiful women for powerful men. On July 6, 2019, Epstein was arrested. 2 weeks later, he was murdered in his jail cell, all during President Trump's first term. Shortly after Trump began his second term, political agents and useful idiots posed for the cameras with DOJ binders, as if justice was coming, and nothing followed. Until this week, when we were told that the DOJ and the FBI concluded that Epstein had no client list and died by suicide. While this isn't fooling the awakening masses, political agents and useful idiots began doing their best to defend Trump and steer everyone towards immigration, where the solution will obviously be the digital ID for every U.S. citizen. The overwhelming majority of U.S. government representatives are the recipients of hundreds of millions of dollars paid out by AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were clearly part of a sexual blackmail operation run by the Mossad and the CIA to further own the American government. This is why our government officials are all on board with the genocide being committed by the U.S. and Israel.
Do you think that there can be a two-state solution that creates an independent...
I don't know. I'd ask Bibi that question. You have the greatest man in the world to answer that age-old question, two-state. Go ahead. You give him your honest answer.
I think Palestinians should have all the powers to govern themselves, but none of the powers to threaten us. And that means that certain powers, like overall security, will always remain in our hands. Now, that is a fact. And no one in Israel will agree to anything else because we don't commit suicide. We want life, we cherish life for ourselves, for our neighbors. And I think we can work out a peace between us and the entire Middle East with President Trump's leadership. And by working together, I think we can establish a very, very broad peace that will include all our neighbors.
When Pam Bondi was asked about all this, Trump couldn't help but interrupt her and show frustration that anyone was concerned about his old friend of 15 years.
One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for an American or foreign intelligence agency. The former labor secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney, Alex Costa, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of the set?
Yeah, sure. If
Pam, could I just interrupt for 1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
And Pam Bondi suggested that the child porn they have in evidence was Epstein's personal collection that he downloaded from the internet and nothing at all to do with blackmail.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file, along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that.
Greg Reese reporting.
All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. It is Doug Diamond here for the Diamond Report Live yet again, 10:05 p.m. on July 13th, 2025. Welcome. I'm glad you guys made it. And it's a really good thing to be here, and we got lots to look at tonight. That Epstein thing is quite the story. This week it's really exploded, especially when Trump goes about covering things up. And I think you'll be interested to know, I've got some stuff to talk about tonight as far as that whole thing goes. We won't start with that, but stay tuned for that. We've got from some information, I guess you could call it a dead man switch, from Virginia Giuffre. Okay, so stay tuned for that, and some pretty relevant and revealing information coming up with the whole Epstein thing. And turns out maybe Trump hasn't exactly been telling the truth about old Jeffrey Epstein. And we're going to look at that again in a little bit. So welcome, you guys. I'm glad you're here. And let's take a look at the news. I've got Hal's website pulled up here, halturnerradioshow.com. The one and only article I pulled up from this site is one from earlier today. Russia's brutally effective new formula to crush Ukraine's arms production. You can see this fairly complicated map here. Russian forces conducted another massive strike on Kiev-controlled territory, focusing on critical defense industry sites in western Ukraine. While Ukrainian sources claim 600-plus drones were used, which was likely an inflated number, the strikes caused significant damage to high-value targets. Targets that were hit that were called and considered key targets. The Lvov region electron plant producing components for Ukraine military hardware, aircraft repair facility specialized in the MiG-29 maintenance and repeatedly has been struck since 2022. The Lutsk region, the motor plant specialized in aircraft engine repairs, including RD-33 engines and MiG-29s. The RD-33 engines are used in MiG-29s. The Chernovsky region electron mash plant specialized in military production says the strikes again demonstrated greater concentration on a limited number of targets, allowing increased munitions expenditure on their destruction. In the current reality, this tactic has proven more effective than scattered strikes, enabling breakthroughs of Ukrainian air defenses and damage to key enemy facilities. So the battle continues in Ukraine, and Russia continues hitting them hard. And there's been a lot of talk as to this coming week, potentially tomorrow, maybe the start of another announcement from Trump saying that, yes, they're going to be hitting and attacking Russia even deeper inside Russia proper than they have been, giving them even longer range weapons, but then also taking off the safety valve on some of those long-range weapons as well. And it appears that Trump is doubling down on helping Ukraine and sending them even more arms and stuff. So again, we're going to look at that as we proceed tonight. So just stay tuned for that. And then let's see, I've got a few other articles pulled up here. Right off the bat, we've got needtoknow.news, which is G. Edward Griffin's site. I thought this one was kind of interesting. We've been talking about the guy who's running for mayor of New York, and I think this really has everything to do with him and with his run. This particular headline is saying IRS gives churches the blessing to endorse candidates. Since when? Since when? The national religious broadcasters in 2 Texas churches sued the IRS last year, arguing that the Johnson Amendment that barred churches from getting involved in political campaigns violated freedom of speech and freedom to exercise religion. The IRS has now agreed, imagine that timing, they have now agreed that churches can air political endorsements without danger of losing their tax-exempt status. Church leaders, especially those with large platforms, have rarely endorsed or spoken against candidates, even the ones who promoted values overtly antithetical to biblical teachings, including abortion and homosexuality. The idea of losing their tax-exempt status has served as an intimidating prospect in a time when many church budgets are hanging by a thread. Yeah, it's exactly the whole point of this Johnson Amendment, as in Lyndon Baines Johnson. He's the one that came up with this whole idea. And of course, yes, it intimidates the churches into not talking about political subject matter, so they shut up about it, don't talk about abortion, and don't talk about homosexuality and all these different things. And because of that, then they're able to control them. They have purse strings, essentially. They have controls over what the churches can say. Well, now with this whole thing happening with the mayor, the Muslim mayor, potentially, who could be elected here pretty soon in New York City, if you get all the mosques in the New York State area, New York City in particular, you get all the mosques to then endorse, what's his name, Zohan Mandami, you get them to endorse him, and that will probably put him over the top. It will certainly help him. So I just think the timing of this whole thing with the IRS deciding says the IRS has now agreed. They have now agreed. Like, it was just up to them, and they could just make a blanket decision on when it was okay for churches to give political endorsements. Well, it's because they want the mosques to endorse this guy, I think. Personally, I think the timing of that seems absolutely key as to that whole thing. Pretty wild, huh? And then this one I came across was a link to Zero Hedge, but it was originally an article. Well, it's originally an article on Zero Hedge, and they had some of it on needtoknow.news. I just thought I would pull up the full article here because it is kind of a countdown here. 17 out-of-place artifacts that suggest high-tech civilizations existed thousands or even millions of years ago. So something that comes up pretty often when you're researching things, and you get into the whole mud flood thing and all of that. Well, this is even a little bit more detailed. So here are some of the items on this list. Number 17, it starts at 17 and works backwards here. 2,000-year-old batteries, ? Clay jars with asphalt stoppers and iron rods made some 2,000 years ago have been proven capable of generating more than a volt of electricity. These ancient batteries were found by German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig in 1938, just outside Baghdad, Iraq. Here's a rendering here, an illustration of one. Batteries. Ancient Egyptian light bulb, ? That's number 16. I'll just read the headlines here. You guys can pull up this article and look at it. It's on Zero Hedge, and again, we'll link to this article in the Substack post that I send out later in the week, Tuesday or Wednesday this week. We'll have all these links for you guys, so make sure you're on that list. Great Wall of Texas. In 1852, what is now known as Rockwall County, Texas, farmers digging a well discovered what appeared to be an ancient rock wall. So that's kind of weird. Estimated to be some 200 to 400,000 years old. Which, who knows if that's true, but pretty interesting, though. Number 14, a 1.8 billion year old nuclear reactor, ? Number 13, counting backwards here from 17 to 1, seafaring map makers before Antarctica was covered in ice. You guys have probably seen this or heard of this before. A map created by Turkish admiral and cartographer Piri Reis in 1513, but sourced from other earlier maps, is thought to depict Antarctica as it was in a very remote age before it was covered with ice. Yeah, some people would say before it was as far south as it is now. So the Piri Reis map is a key here. Number 12, again going backwards here, 2,000-year-old earthquake detector. Pretty wild. A seismoscope. The world's first seismoscope. And number 11, 150,000-year-old pipes, as in water pipes. Number 10, the Antikythera mechanism, referred to as an ancient computer, quote unquote, a computer, built by the Greeks around 150 BC. Number 9, drill bit in coal. A drill bit in coal. Number 8, 2.8 billion year old spheres. Weird. 2.8 billion years old. Not sure how they got the calculations on that. Pretty funny. Number 9, an iron pillar of Delhi. That was number 7. And number 6, Viking sword. Number 5, 100 million year old hammer. Number 4, a prehistoric work site. Number 3, a million year old bridge. Question mark. Number 2, 500,000 year old spark plug. And number 1, the prehistoric wall near the Bahamas, which I have heard of this before and seen other pictures and some TV shows and stuff about that. A wall of rock in large, thick block shapes, which is also very similar to some of the ones that you can see in Peru and in other places all around the world. So it's very interesting that they've put all these things in one article here on Zero Hedge. I thought it was kind of neat. Spent a lot of time on that, but you guys can take a look at that. I thought it was kind of interesting. You don't really see too many stories on that type of stuff where they put it all in one place. Usually about one thing, and then it's up to you to find the others. So anyway, that's on Zero Hedge, linked to from needtoknow.news, and then a few more from this same site. At least 10 children killed by Israeli drones while waiting outside a clinic for medical aid and food. There's a little girl here that they're patching up. At least 15 Palestinians, including 10 children, have been killed in an Israeli strike while queuing up for nutritional supplements outside a medical clinic in central Gaza. Yeah, they were just trying to get food. U.S.-based aid group Project Hope, which runs the clinic, said the attack was a blatant violation of international law. The Israeli military said that it struck a, quote, Hamas terrorist, one person, I guess, supposedly, and regretted any harm to civilians. Don't they always? More than 100 Palestinians have been reported to have been killed on average each day this month. 100. Ceasefire talks are at a standstill. Imagine if there were 100 Israelis dying every day. Wouldn't there be some more outrage? The Israeli defense minister had ordered plans for a camp to be built in the city of Rafah, would hold all 2 million people who are living in Gaza. I think there's significantly less now because a lot of them have been killed. A former soldier said that any transfer of a civilian population is a form of a war crime and ethnic cleansing. So there's a video here that's embedded. I did watch it earlier. It does have a little bit of blood and gore here, but you guys can watch that if you want. I won't bother playing it tonight, but it is very sad to see what Israel's doing. They continue to bomb innocent, men, women, and children. And in this case, they're just saying, we had to get this one guy, a, quote, Hamas terrorist. And in the process, they killed at least 10 children here to get the one guy. So isn't that nice? Lovely. Israel continues on with their genocide. All right, and then more on that. Israeli soldier describes arbitrary killing of civilians in Gaza and the normalization of killing. So this is worth a watch as well. There's 2 videos embedded here, but it's an Israeli soldier describing the arbitrary killing of civilians. It's like the Wild West, and they love it. So it just shows you how cold these people are. An Israeli reservist who served 3 tours of duty in Gaza has told Sky News in a rare on-camera interview that his unit was often ordered to shoot anyone entering areas soldiers defined as no-go zones, regardless of whether they posed a threat at all. A practice that he says left civilians dead where they fell. He disclosed that the criteria of opening fire on civilians shifted depending on the commander, and he compared it to the Wild West. He said that the killing has become normalized. Of course it has. He said that Israelis don't feel any mercy for the Palestinians in Gaza, and added, I think a lot of them really felt like they were doing something good, meaning the IDF soldiers. He said, I think the core of it, that in their mind, these people aren't innocent. Yeah, they see everyone as non-human, and everyone, or all of the Palestinians, I should say, as non-humans. And it's okay to blow them away because they're a potential terrorist, even if it's a little kid. So yeah, this is about Israel and their war crimes. Again, videos embedded and more information on this page. So yes, the cold-blooded murder and genocide continues to be unchecked, I should say. And then again with the Epstein story here, massive Jeffrey Epstein cover-up draws backlash against the Trump administration. This was the big story really this week. Epstein, who was found dead by hanging from bed sheets in his New York City prison cell in 2019 while awaiting trial. Recent memo from the DOJ and FBI concluded that there is no evidence of a client list associated with Epstein and confirmed that he died by suicide in 2019. It contradicts previous statements made by officials, yes, and everyone else in the entire world. Contradicts literally everything because it's simply not true, right? The betrayal behind the Trump administration's denial of the Epstein list, systemic blackmail, and murder/suicide is causing significant backlash from many conservative supporters. Journalist Sagar Enjeti said that the most important thing is the record of the exchange of money as Epstein came to power largely because he was a money laundering expert. Enjeti made the point that the cover-up lie is not to convince Americans, but it is instead being used to signal to everybody involved in the scheme that the U.S. government will go to extreme lengths to protect them. I think there's a lot of truth to that, don't you guys? U.S. government will go to extreme lengths to protect them. And we're going to look at closer who some of them are. And of course, we know some of them, but there will be at least one person that will be mentioned specifically by name by Virginia Giuffre, or Giuffre, however you say her last name, no disrespect intended. She goes on a little bit of a talk here we're going to listen to in a bit. I guess you could call it the dead man switch. It's really the best way to put it. And I think she calls it that. And she names names in that particular recording. And I think you'll be surprised, although you may not be too surprised, on who one of the former U.S. presidents are that she continues to mention. And it's not Trump, I'll say that much, and we already know Clinton's on the list. It's someone else. I was a little surprised to hear it in a way. So anyway, stay tuned for that. We're going to look at that a little closer, but this has been the story this week. Yeah, this is the Trump mega massive crisis of the week. I think that this whole thing is really coming off the rails very quickly, and it's Epstein and his involvement with him over the years. They clearly were friends. It was certainly a lot more than simply riding on the plane one time that he claims that Trump's airplane was in the shop and that Epstein gave him a ride to Florida one time. That's pretty much all he admits to, and yet we saw all of the video footage in the Greg Reese report at the beginning of the show. Clearly that's not true. Clearly Trump is hiding something. And I'll go a step further here. I think that now, after seeing some further evidence just today and researching all this, I think that Elon Musk was right when he said, and then he later deleted the post on X, that Trump wants to hide this because his name is in the list. His name is part of the list. I think he's exactly right. And we'll go into why I think that now and didn't before. And we've got further details. We've got names and we've got places and confirmations that we're going to bring to you guys in just a bit. So stay tuned. Again, Trump, in my opinion, is definitely a lot deeper in this Epstein thing than he would have any of us believe. So anyway. All right. And then this one on needtoknow.news as well. Cause of the LA fire cover-up. Newsom funds affordable apartments to replace homes. Didn't we say this when it all happened, within really hours of it all happening? The fires in Pacific Palisades. Gavin Newsom, Karen Bass, and LA officials may be hiding the real cause of one of the deadliest wildfires in California history because they could face criminal charges of criminal negligence. Yeah, well, you think they ever will? I don't think they will. When will any of these people ever face any sort of charges? There was another smaller fire that burned on January 1st, 2025, just 6 days before the catastrophic Palisades fire ignited at the exact same place. It is a protocol to obtain a thermal image of a fire after it is extinguished. But if it appears that the authorities failed to do this, and violated the protocol. So it's saying that that apparently is what happened. They violated this protocol because they did not obtain a thermal image of the fire on January 1st this year. It is now 6 months after the destructive wildfires that destroyed entire neighborhoods like the Pacific Palisades, but fewer than 100 building permits have been issued in Los Angeles. 100. California Governor Gavin Newsom has announced $101 million in funding for new multifamily rental housing, which is something we mentioned when this all happened, as a solution for housing displaced low-income residents in the area. It almost seems like this was the goal all along. Well, of course, it was the goal all along, isn't it? Yes, get rid of all of those single-family dwellings and contort yourself to Agenda 2030 and have only those multi-family sort of residential housing situations in Pacific Palisades. So yes, there's further info here, including a video embedded. James Lee talking about some of these details. And there it is. California Governor Gavin Newsom announces funding for new multifamily rental housing after LA wildfires. Yep, not surprised. Anyway, that one is on needtoknow.news. And then some of the headlines that I've got pulled up here on technocracy.news. The Phoenix Conspiracy, how Silicon Valley's shadow network is engineering America's constitutional collapse. When technocracy was architected at Columbia University in 1932, the scientists and engineers made no provision for a political or spiritual component. In other words, they created a one-legged stool. Modern technocrats have remedied this by adding a political component called dark enlightenment as a religious ideology, loosely Christian nationalism is what he's calling it. Thus, the three-legged stool is now engaged in walking us straight into techno-feudal digital slavery, aka technocracy. So, and you could say that Trump is the technocracy president, isn't he? He's all about technology, stuff he doesn't understand whatsoever, seemingly. He's all for it and putting everything he can behind it. So anyway, that is one of the stories on technocracy.news. And then this one, Unibabies, lab-grown sperm and eggs just 7 years away. Lab-grown. They are one step away from full-blown human gene editing, but first things first. Unibabies, taking cells from males and females in any combination can produce either eggs or sperm, which can be united to create an implantable embryo that could be used in a human surrogate or in an artificial incubator, such as those pictured on the screen here. This was predicted in Huxley's Brave New World, which was written in 1932. Yes, also puts one in mind of the movie The Matrix and many others. Anyway, that's one of the articles on technocracy.news. And then the last one, what if AI isn't intelligence, but anti-intelligence? The concept of anti-intelligence was noted by a futurist and AI expert. In short, AI causes a dissolving of cognitive boundaries. This subtle, almost invisible change displaces the mental struggle, the friction of thought, and the need for creative thinking. Mechanistic AI can spit out facts and even accurate insights, but is totally antithetical to the human thinking process. As anti-intelligence spreads at a scale to the whole world, humanity finds itself moving closer to a simulacrum. One of those words that's used quite often on this site, simulacrum, meaning a simulation, essentially. So, and then the agenda film is embedded here on this particular article on the homepage of this site. So anyway, that's the top 3 articles on technocracy.news. Some of the Liberty Beacon articles I pulled up this week. Trump and Bondi punt on Epstein questions. Oh, they shut it down, didn't they? Trump and Bondi completely punted over a question over Epstein during Tuesday's televised cabinet meeting, which We saw the clip in that Reese report at the beginning of the show. So we know what happened. And then there it is embedded there as well. So yeah, and of course now people are calling for Bondi to step down and all this stuff, which who knows? I don't really see that happening. I feel like she's, whatever you might think of her, I feel like she's doing what he wants. So if she's doing what he wants, then she's probably staying, is my opinion. France opens criminal investigation into what else but X. French Public Prosecutor's Office has opened an investigation into X over the alleged use of its algorithm for foreign interference. Whether or not X has violated French law by manipulating its algorithms to extract user data fraudulently. That seems pretty broad, doesn't it? The investigation was launched after two reports were submitted to the Paris Public Prosecutor's Office Cybercrime Division on January 12th. And this guy, one of these prosecutors, in his statement he posted on X, he wrote that he filed his initial inquiry because he was, quote, convinced that an informational bias extreme on the X platform was being used to serve Musk's political opinions, and that this could only happen through algorithmic manipulation. So in other words, it sounds like they're saying that, well, France is accusing Musk of putting his political opinions into the algorithm so that it would push his opinions first and foremost. That's what it sounds like. The investigation focuses on two elements: tampering with the operation of an automated data processing system as part of an organized group, and the fraudulent extraction of data from an automated data processing system as part of an organized group. So, I don't know. Who knows? I don't really see this going anywhere, but it's hard to say these days. It is France, after all, right? So that's one of the Liberty Beacon articles. This one, too, newborns to get $1,000 Trump accounts. So if you have a newborn, I guess he or she could have a $1,000 Trump account. Here's how it works. The program will encourage saving for a child's future, promote financial literacy, and reduce wealth inequality. Yeah, $1,000. It's going to do all that. The Republican reconciliation package, better known as the Big Beautiful Bill, the Build Back Better bill, I guess, introduced Trump accounts for newborns, which were previously dubbed MAGA accounts, or Money Account for Growth and Advancement. They always have to have those acronyms, don't they? It never fails. But now it's MAGA is Money Account for Growth and Advancement. The accounts are a new tax-advantaged investment vehicle comparable to individual retirement accounts, pre-funded with $1,000 from the Treasury Department, which means from the American taxpayers, for every child born between January 1st and December 31st, 2028. So anytime in the next 3 years. Children born before this year will also be eligible, but not for the initial $1,000 seed money. So if you're hearing this and you were born, you might be eligible for $1,000. Talk to Donald Trump about that. Parents will be eligible to contribute up to $5,000 annually, including up to $2,500 tax-free from a parent's employer. The money must be invested in a broad stock market index, and earnings will grow tax-deferred until the account holder withdraws the funds. So there's lots of little stipulations here on the $1,000. Anyways, there's quite a bit here on this whole thing with the $1,000 Trump accounts. I thought that was kind of strange. I hadn't heard that anywhere else. But that's on the Liberty Beacon. And then this one too. Why is every natural disaster being politicized? Yeah, we've seen a lot with the flooding in Texas and in other places this week. So this is going off of that. Why is every natural disaster being politicized? Even while the search for missing people in flood-ravaged Texas continues, the politicized invective has come from the left. Perhaps the most shocking comments came from Dr. Christina B. Probst, a Houston-based pediatrician who mocked the victims and their families because she perceived some of them might have voted for Donald Trump. Probst, who was fired by her employer, posted this on Facebook. May all visitors, children, non-MAGA voters, and pets, non-MAGA voters, and pets be safe and dry. Kerr County MAGA voted to gut FEMA. They deny climate change. May they get what they voted for. Bless their hearts. That was her post. Yeah. So she was fired, I guess, because of this. And then here's another post from Sadie Perkins, who had been appointed to her position by Houston's former mayor. This was her post. I know I'm going to get canceled for this, but Camp Mystic is a white-only girls Christian camp. They don't even have a token Asian. They don't have a token black person. It's an all-white, white-only conservative Christian camp. If you ain't white, you ain't right. You ain't getting in, and you ain't going, period. So that was her post. Again, Sadie Perkins. Actually, a look at the Camp Mystic website shows that the camp has black camp counselors, and counselors often are drawn from former campers. No doubt, when the camp was founded 99 years ago, it would have been all white, but the camp has changed with the times, just as one would expect. Yeah, we talked about the Camp Mystic thing last week with all the weirdness that had to do with that. I don't really have a follow-up on any of that, but I thought that was very interesting on how many various things that there were that we found about Camp Mystic last week. Anyway, this is just talking about using the tragedies like this in an overly political sort of blame game here, so that they can blame Trump or whoever. So yeah, and then in this case they're blaming Trump, but also just white people in general, and not going along with climate change or whatever. So anyway, that is one of the articles here on the Liberty Beacon. And then one more from this site. Speaking of storms and engineered weather and things like that, which certainly it's looking like the whole Texas flood was engineered to some degree, or at least as a result of the weather being engineered, whether directly or indirectly. Lee Zeldin releases information on contrails and solar geoengineering. Yes, this came out earlier in the week. Mr. Dane, when I spoke to him, was livid about this whole thing, as he should be. And needless to say, he doesn't like Mr. Zeldin too much. And he actually put out a post about that earlier in the week. So see Geoengineering Watch about that. Actually, I think I pulled that article up, so we'll look at that. So this article comes from Breitbart, I guess. The EPA, which is the Environmental Pollution Agency, that's what I call them, Administrator Lee Zeldin revealed that the agency had released online resources regarding geoengineering and contrails, explaining that the EPA is committed to total transparency. You know, when they say that it's committing to total transparency, you get nothing but a whitewash. You get nothing but about as much fog in your vision as possible. That's just my 2 cents worth here. Zeldin revealed in a video announcement that everything the EPA knows about contrails to solar geoengineering would be found in the online resources, adding that anyone who reads through this information will know as much as we do about these topics, which is basically zero. Very little. So yeah, they're calling it a conspiracy theory, and it doesn't exist, and you're crazy, just as you might expect. So even though you've got Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in there, who has literally interviewed Dane Wigington before and talks about wanting to stop geoengineering that is ongoing, that is global, that is certainly happening in a big way over the United States. He talks about wanting to stop that. And then here you have Trump's EPA pick here, Lee Zeldin, saying, no, it doesn't exist and you're nuts. You're a conspiracy theorist. But they're going to be totally transparent with us. And this is the video. Let me see how long it is here. Let me just play a second of it. Okay, here. Well, let's just play it.
And important questions about geoengineering and contrails. The American public deserves and expects honesty and transparency from their government when seeking answers. But for years, people who asked questions in good faith were dismissed, even vilified by the media and their own government. That era is over. The Trump EPA is committed to total transparency. As a result, I tasked my team at EPA to compile a list of everything we know about contrails and geoengineering for the purpose of releasing it to you now publicly. In other words, I want you to know everything I know about these topics and without any exception. Instead of simply dismissing these questions and concerns as baseless conspiracies, we're meeting them head on. We did the legwork, looked at the science, consulted agency experts, and pulled in relevant outside information to put these online resources together. Everything we know about contrails to solar geoengineering will be in there. That means anyone who reads through this information will know as much about these topics as I do as EPA administrator. To anyone who's ever looked up to the streaks in the sky and asked, what the heck is going on? Or seen headlines about private actors and even governments looking to blot out the sun in the name of stopping global warming? We've endeavored to answer all of your questions at the links on your screen. In fact, EPA shares many of the same concerns when it comes to potential threats to human health and the environment, especially from solar geoengineering activities. The enthusiasm for experiments that would pump pollutants into the high atmosphere has set off alarm bells here at the Trump EPA. Prior to now, EPA has never been this proactive to raise awareness about concerns with geoengineering and to stop this activity from being scaled up. This is what it looks like when government actually listens to the will of the people and doesn't try to squash it. You can always trust this administration and this EPA to take your concerns seriously, answer your questions honestly, and carry out the will of voters with integrity.
That's right. It will be as clear as mud. I think that's the old saying. It'll be as clear as mud, yes. Well, anyways, that's his official statement here. And you will know everything he knows about solar geoengineering. Well, it's probably not very much. So Mr. Dane here says on geoengineeringwatch.org earlier in the week, after Lee Zeldin put out that video that we just watched, EPA head Zeldin is engaged in a pitiful attempt at damage control due to the rapidly growing awareness of the weather warfare raging in our skies. Zeldin's first pathetic attempt to pretend he and the U.S. government were going to address the constant geoengineering jet spraying assault in our skies was to scapegoat two IT publicity stunt actors from Silicon Valley that started a facade geoengineering startup company called Make Sunsets. What exactly did the Make Sunsets PR actors do? They launched a few balloons in Baja California and Nevada, balloons with a few grams of SO2 tied to the bottom, which is virtually meaningless. Now Zeldin is reading his carefully crafted script, claiming he is going to prove total transparency in regard to our government's knowledge of geoengineering. Really, Mr. Zeldin? Should we consider the Epstein files as an example of your definition of total transparency? I like that. The curtain is coming down on the criminal cabal that has long since been masquerading as the U.S. government. Political parties are irrelevant in this equation. Climate engineering, weather warfare, geoengineering must be fully exposed and halted. Time's not on our side. So there's the same video we just watched here. Actually, it's slightly different. Dane added a little bit to that. But anyway, we kind of covered it in that article, but I just wanted to point that out, that this came out earlier in the week. And yes, more total transparency, just like Epstein. Very well put, Mr. Dane. All right. And then let's see. We've got a few articles pulled up from Revolver as well. This is one here that you may have heard. of that Dan Bongino is considering resigning. Deputy FBI Director Bongino has told people he is considering resigning amid the Epstein files fallout. So we'll see if that actually happens. The rumors are flying for sure that he's had his differences with Blondie. Although it appears that Patel isn't going anywhere. Kash Patel, I think, staying. This article is mentioning Susie Wiles as well, who I just found out fairly recently that Susie Wiles used to work for Netanyahu. So isn't that nice? So we have the ongoing Trump administration coup by Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel. So that's actually who's running the show, as we all know. But it's becoming more and more obvious. I think everybody's starting to see what's going on. Hence the whole Epstein cover-up. All right, and then this thread here. I'm not sure about Kash leaving, but the report that Bongino is done cleaning up after Pam Bondi is 100% accurate and comes after months of frustration. I have this on airtight multiple sourcing, according to this post here on X. Rahim Kassam is the person that posted this. And Dan isn't the only one who feels that way. Both Kash and Dan for months have tried to get Pam to understand the importance of full transparency in her department, especially on the Epstein stuff. Yes, but just a little sidebar here. I think I know why it's being covered up, and we're going to look at that here in a few minutes. For reasons becoming apparent, this has fallen on deaf ears. Pam has been giving multiple avenues to pursue and infinite examples of people who need to be brought in front of a special counsel, but she's refused to budge every time. See, that tells me that she's been put in place to do this job, to stonewall everything, and she's doing a really good job. So if you want to look at it from that standpoint, people think she's a dumb blonde. I think she knows exactly what she's doing, and she's simply being told what to do and doing that. Most likely by Trump. Who else could it be? There's an interesting New York versus Florida thing going on here, too. Susie Wiles, a long-standing, close and personal friend of Pam's, in the event Trump would consider keeping Dan Bongino, and maybe Kash if he wants out, too, it is likely his chief of staff will recommend against it, which adds layers of problems. I don't think Bongino will be back in the office Monday if something doesn't happen with Pam, or even a special counsel search announced. Perhaps. It says, this would represent a massive victory for the swamp and indeed for sex traffickers and pedos. I'll conclude by now reminding everyone how people like Dan Bongino and Kash Patel sacrificed as much as they possibly could for MAGA and Trump, and I have no doubt they'll remain loyal to both regardless of what happens here. The truth is Pam needs to go fast. Update. Matt Gaetz would struggle with Senate confirmation, and to serve as acting, you need to be at the department already. But a recess appointment, ? They've got a couple emojis here like, The other thing people fail to understand is that if Trump removes Bondi, and if she is replaced with someone who really wants to haul folks like Acosta in front of a special counsel, that special counsel and the new attorney general will need the POTUS levels of Secret Service protection, maybe more. Remember the Alex Acosta sweetheart deal negotiated by Columbia University's new lawyer, Jay Lefkowitz, a big Jeb donor in 2008, has scarcely been probed. All of that needs fresh attention and full transparency. I don't think you're going to get full transparency. As long as Bondi's in there, and again, her job is to stonewall, it seems to me. And again, I think she's doing a good job. You can find her pretty much every night on Fox News. So, and not attending to the things on her desk. That's where things go to disappear forever, apparently. Update, Loomer's scoop Patel and Bongino furious with Pam, which we just kind of covered a little bit of that, but this is saying that they're furious, but, time will tell what happens here. From the very beginning, many believe Bondi botched the Epstein rollout. I think she was put in place to do that, don't you? MAGA supporters haven't forgotten that awkward February stunt at the White House where so-called Epstein files were handed out to conservative influencers. They were actually old files that turned out to be publicly available court records that everyone had already seen. The base expected bombshells, what they got felt like a cover-up, which of course it was. It was an embarrassing moment for Bondi and the Trump administration. Bondi even made the cover of the box look like some official classified documents. Yeah, and everybody got a free hat too. People were furious. Yeah, I remember when that happened. They were all for just a brief instant, they were all the cool kids. But turns out they got nothing. Just like everyone else. So yeah, Laura Loomer's scoop here. FBI Director Cash and Dan Bongino are livid with Pam Bondi over her DOJ memo and lack of transparency from her office regarding the Epstein files. Source tells me that Bongino is taking the day off today, meaning, I guess that was Friday, from his job, and there's more to see here. So anyway, yeah, I don't know. Not looking too good for Trump and company for this Epstein thing. Yeah, Laura Loomer rips AG Pam Bondi over Epstein files. She was always lying. Again, if that was her job, though, she's done it pretty well. This is another link from revolver.news. This website, though, is lifezet.com. So more info on that whole back and forth, the whole melee between Loomer and Pam Bondi and everybody else that's involved in all of that. So it's been a year as of today. 1 year after Butler, Secret Service, FBI face new questions. Well, that may be all they get is some questions. Still reveling in his political comeback after surviving 2 near-miss assassination attempts last December, then President-elect Trump stopped by the Christmas party of the Secret Service detail that was responsible for both saving his life and the failures that nearly ended it. Trump at the time responded to the mixed feelings in trademark fashion. He regaled the agents gathered for some lighthearted celebration after a turbulent few months, but didn't mince words. For one junior agent who was charged with leading security for Butler, and he appeared to hold responsible for some of the most glaring failures. The quote here was, "As you guys can see, that person is no longer welcome here," he told the crowd, elaborating that he didn't want this agent anywhere near him ever again, according to several Secret Service sources familiar with his comments. Fast forward 7 months, just days away from the 1-year anniversary of the failures at the Butler rally, which would be today. The Secret Service announced limited disciplinary actions for those that it deemed responsible for security lapses. 6 agents, including Mayotte Perez, who Trump is referring to at the December party, have been placed on 10 to 42 days of unpaid leave for their roles in egregious security breaches. So anyways, there have been a few people, I guess, that have been suspended, but the family of Corey Comparatore, who was murdered that day, is demanding answers, and some of the other guys who were shot who just took a bullet, and yet were okay in the end, they are also demanding answers here, and I'm not sure they're going to get them. Again, with the cover-up. So, Bongino and Patel said that there was nothing more to see and that there was just a single shooter. A lot like the whole JFK thing. Just a single shooter, lone gunman, that's all it was. Nothing to see here. Move on. Move along. Anyway, that is on Real Clear Politics. And then another Life Zet article. Tim Walz's connected assassin makes new admissions about his motives. So this is going back a couple weeks now. The man accused in the politically charged double homicide of the Minnesota House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark, is denying that the killings were politically or ideologically motivated. Yes, of course. Vance Bolter, the man accused of assassinating the Minnesota lawmaker and her husband, says the murders had nothing to do with Trump or abortion, but admits there's a deeper story that goes back 24 months. Yeah, he was a guy that said that Walz had something to do with it, so says in a series of messages and video calls from inside the county jail, Vance Bolter told the Post this week that neither Trump nor abortion played a role in the events that led to the June 14th killings. Then he mentions abortion in this article here. Well, they mention abortion in this article here because I think that was what this Melissa Hortman had voted against, had something to do with abortion in Minnesota. She voted against that particular bill and then was later dead. She was later killed by Vance Bolter. It says, "You are fishing and I can't talk about my case. I'll say it didn't involve either the Trump stuff or pro-life," he wrote through the jail's internal messaging system. And he says, "I am pro-life personally." He's pro-life, but he's a murderer. Figure that one out. Anyways, I'm looking to see what he had to say about Walz. The list allegedly included Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and various abortion providers. So, are we supposed to forget that Vance Bolter claimed Tim Walz hired him to eliminate Amy Klobuchar? That's right, he did say that. Despite the presence of political materials, Bolter denied any connection to Trump or abortion activism, stating that more information would emerge that goes back 24 months. In one of the recorded visits, Bolter referenced his Christian faith when asked about the victims and their families. So yes, he's a believer. He's a murderer, but he's a believer too. Bolter, who describes himself as an ordained minister and father of 4, said he previously ran businesses in food, farming, security, and other industries. Bolter, who is appointed to Minnesota's Workforce Development Council by Governor Walz in 2019, declined to elaborate on his relationship with the governor, but said that he supported Trump. Yes, and he also was asked specifically what podcasts he listens to. And he specifically was, well, his roommate, I guess, was asked about that. And he said, oh, yeah, he listens to InfoWars. So they're trying to hang this around Alex's neck as well. So anyway, that is on LifeZet, which is linked to an awful lot now from Revolver.news. So I'm wondering if they might have something to do with this site. I don't know. I can't confirm that. I just know they're linking to a lot of their articles all of a sudden, kind of out of nowhere. All right, then this Twitter post here. Everyone in the Obama White House lied to the FISA court during Russiagate. Comey, Brennan, Hillary, Clapper, and Joe Biden. They used the Steele dossier with evidence that they knew was false. They received spy warrants on the Republican presidential candidate, Donald Trump. They continued to spy on the president when he was in the White House. It's long past time to finally hold them accountable. Thanks for having me on. And then he was on with this person, Greg Jarrett, I guess. Mike Davis from the A3P, the Article 3 project, A3P. So he's confirming here that Comey, Brennan, Hillary Clinton, Clapper, and Joe Biden all knew it was fake, and they need to be held accountable. And do you think they ever will be? Me neither. Me neither. I checked my X notifications earlier, and I noticed I had followed a certain person here who you may remember from InfoWars, who was also a January 6er, Joe Biggs. You guys remember him? And he followed me back. I was surprised to see that. But welcome, Joe. I'm sure you're not listening, but if you ever happen to see my tweets, it's an honor. Pretty cool. Joe Biggs is following me on X. So yeah, make sure you're on there and following along as well. And I try and tweet and retweet some interesting stuff on there. So x.com, and then it's the Diamond Report on X. And then this one, another LifeZet article, which again tied, I think, directly or indirectly to Revolver.news. RFK Jr. cuts off illegal alien access to over a dozen federal benefit programs. So I thought this was good news. I'm not real sure how good a news it is, although, you wouldn't see this in a Kamala Harris administration, I don't think. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services announced on Thursday that it had formally ended a decades-old policy that allowed illegal immigrants to access certain federal taxpayer-funded benefits. The move, rescinds an interpretation of the law first implemented under the Clinton administration in '98. In a statement released Thursday, RFK Jr. said the department is taking steps to prioritize American citizens and restore the original intent of federal assistance programs. For too long, the government has diverted hardworking American tax dollars to incentivize illegal immigration, Kennedy said. Yes, but it's okay when the Democrats do it. And, Trump has been reversing some of the stuff Kennedy's trying to do. So I don't really blame RFK Jr. for some of this stuff. This, I'm not sure will get reversed. But it can be said that the Trump administration just recently reversed some of the decisions that Kennedy wanted to do on getting the fluoride out of the water systems in this country, as in hydrofluorosilicic acid, that kind of fluoride. And the Trump administration reversed what Kennedy wanted to do, and they said, no, leave it in. So, pretty interesting, huh? So, it kind of remains to be seen whether or not this kind of stuff will actually hold true or not, because Kennedy wants to do something and then makes the decision to do it, and then the Trump administration reverses it. So it's like, well, why have him in there if you're just going to reverse what he wants to do anyway? So more deep state, I guess. Deep state getting their way. Leave the fluoride in. Anyway, Revolver.news article again, global revolt against Western tourists turns violent. Thought this was kind of weird. It says, for eons now, tourism has been sold as a win-win. Travelers got culture and escape, and locals got cash and opportunity. But that fantasy is breaking down real fast thanks to Airbnb and soaring costs. All over the world, resentment is boiling over. And tell me if you guys knew about this. I had no idea. Of course, I haven't been traveling. I guess that's probably why. From Mexico City to Madrid, from the Amalfi Coast to Lisbon, locals are watching their cities morph into playgrounds for wealthy tourists and Instagram influencers. They're not happy about it. As a matter of fact, they're downright angry, they're loud, and in some places they're turning violent. The global tourism boom, which was fueled by cheap flights, Airbnb, and remote workers, has been a dream for developers and governments, but it's become a flat-out nightmare for the people who actually live in these hotbed cities. Rents are soaring, family businesses are vanishing, and neighborhoods are being hollowed out by gentrification and digital nomads who treat cities like disposable backdrops for their social media content. And here is where it gets really ironic. Now the tables have turned. Suddenly, it's Mexicans who are furious about outsiders flooding their neighborhoods, driving up the rent, and not speaking the language. Mexicans. Of course, that sounds familiar because that's exactly what's happening to us, only it's not digital nomads bringing laptops and tourist dollars. It's a tsunami of illegals who cross our borders, drain our resources, and give absolutely nothing back. Yes, and end up on the dole, the taxpayers' dole, and get thousands and thousands of dollars every year. The difference here is that these so-called digital invaders in Mexico's are, at least they're legally, spending money and boosting the economy. America's illegal invaders are bleeding us dry, yet when Americans raise a concern, we're labeled as racist or xenophobic. Funny how the outrage looks a whole lot more justified when they're the ones being overrun. Just look at what illegals are costing American taxpayers, just not in dollars, but in crime and chaos too. Of course, we know about the illegals. I thought this was kind of interesting, just seeing the other side of having Airbnb and cheap flights to other cities in the world. And this particular article is mostly talking about Mexico and how they're unhappy with all the Americans coming to Mexico. It just sounds funny, even having to say that, but I'm looking to see wherever else they're talking about. Over in Europe, protests are spreading across Italy, Spain, and Portugal. Countries that rely heavily on tourism are now cracking under its weight. Locals are taking to the streets, spraying anti-tourist graffiti on walls, and even squirting water pistols at sunburnt visitors, clogging up their neighborhoods. So they don't want the tourist dollars now, I guess. course, they're being overrun by illegals too. They're being brought in by the millions into Europe from Africa in particular. Muslims from North Africa. Says it's not just some random tantrum, it's a full-blown revolt. In Paris, employees are walking off the job. But here's the kicker. Many of the same people gleefully protesting tourists with money in their wallets have nothing to say about the endless flood of illegal migrants pouring into their countries. And these are people who drain public services, strain housing and healthcare, and contribute absolutely nothing in return. No protests, no graffiti, no rage over any of that, just silence. Well, part of that is they'll be arrested if they do protest. That's happening in full force in places like Germany and the UK. You get arrested for talking about the vaunted illegals here. But I digress. Says that silence says everything, right? It's almost as if the global progressive class would prefer locals to direct their outrage at Western tourists who are easy targets and who can't fight back, instead of focusing on the real problem, mass illegal immigration that's reshaping entire countries, overwhelming infrastructure, and bankrupting national identity. So anyway, I guess it goes on here. So if you're planning to go to, I guess, Europe or Mexico, maybe rethink that. According to this particular article, anyway. They may not want you, is what I'm going to say. They may not want you there. But they love the illegals. They love it. Biden-appointed judge set to order stop to ICE raids across California. Yeah. So the judge appointed by Biden, who was a fake president, not actually elected, but this judge, who probably wasn't actually put in place by a president who was legitimate, is ordering ICE raids across California to stop. So get a load of this judge's name. I don't know what's crazier, her or her name. Judge Mame Owusi Mensah Frimpong. I think I've played Frimpong before. Have you? For the U.S. District Court in the Central District of California is set to rule that federal immigration raids across California must come to a halt. Frimpong issued a tentative order that was not made public, though. That ruling is expected on Friday. Frimpong was appointed by the Biden administration, who was illegitimate, and therefore her judgeship is illegitimate, if you ask me. But that won't be challenged, will it? The suit before Frimpong's bench was filed by immigrant rights groups last week, seeks to block federal agents from stopping and arresting brown-skinned people without probable cause and then placing them in, quote, dungeon-like conditions without access to lawyers, which I highly doubt is actually happening, but of course that's what they're going to say. The group who filed the suit includes the ACLU, which also brought a class action suit before the U.S. District Court of New Hampshire to block President Trump's executive order opposing birthright citizenship to be implemented, as well as public counsel. Immigrants who were stopped and detained while waiting for a bus, and a U.S. citizen who was wrongfully detained. Frimpong, who during the hearing indicated that the government lawyer Sean Sedlowski could not back up his claim that federal agents were not indiscriminately targeting people, said arrest reports do not include information as to why they arrest this person, how they happened to be, where, and were they, and what they did. So anyway, I don't know. Looks like Judge Frimpong here may have bitten off more than she can chew, because that will not stand up in an actual court. That doesn't have to do with Judge Frimpong. So, yeah, so Susan's saying, I used to love Pong, yes. Pong, yes, that was a Atari game, if I remember right, and others. All right, post-millennial violence erupts as ICE raids California weed farm, clashes with far-left agitators, and shots reportedly fired at agents. So it's just going from bad to worse here. Immigration Customs Enforcement has taken their operation to the weed farms in Camarillo, where they were attacked by armed protesters. Videos show a protester firing a gun at federal agents. More than 100 people were on the scene, including both protesters and family members of workers. Authorities made an announcement at about 3:45 saying that this is the police. Please make way for emergency vehicles or chemical agents will be deployed. So how about that? Agents fired projectiles into the crowd, including gas canisters, when the crowd did not disperse. Protesters counteracted the effect of the gas by pouring milk on their faces. So yes, the weed farms in Camarillo. ICE agents blocked off a road leading to Glass House Farms. Glass House Farms. Isn't that ironic? Which is one of the largest growers of cannabis in the state with over 5 million square feet on which the plants are grown. The group, called 805 Immigration Coalition, 805 is the local area code there, that's why, which tracks ICE, shared video showing agents blocking the road in advance of the raid. Glasshouse Farms greenhouses in Carpinteria were also raided. Workers could be seen on the other side of the caution tape. A woman who was outside the facility said that her husband, who is undocumented, was working inside. So anyway, the raid on the weed farms in California erupts as far-left agitators and the ICE agents are clashing. So how about that? Very strange. To be expected, though, right? And then I thought I would mention this one. I hadn't heard much about appeal or appeal. Michelle Pfeiffer sounds the alarm on Bill Gates-backed coding for organic produce. Actress Michelle Pfeiffer issued a rare public statement on Thursday concerning appeal, a plant-based coating for produce that was developed with early funding from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Michelle Pfeiffer launches attack on Gates over a concerning FDA approval. Pfeiffer took to Instagram to voice alarm over the product's recent approval for use on the USDA certified organic fruits and vegetables. Appeal, an edible plant-based coating designed to extend the shelf life of fresh fruits and vegetables, was just approved, and now, quote, organic produce is coated with something we cannot see or wash off. Pfeiffer, 67, wrote in an Instagram post, and she said, very concerning. Pfeiffer also shared a video warning that organic produce is no longer safe due to the approval of appeal for use on certified organic goods. Yes, but it's okay when Bill Gates does it. He just loves us and wants us to all be so healthy and to live longer and to prosper and to be happy. Oh, wait. No, he doesn't want any of that, does he? Anyway, yes, appeal. So I guess you got to hand it to Ms. Pfeiffer here. I think she's doing a good thing, putting the word out, using her celebrity for good, at least for this, anyway. Pfeiffer's comments have added a high-profile voice to the ongoing debate. Here's a video here with Dr. I forget his name. Anyways, that is embedded here on this site, Board Trash Panda. How about that for a name? BoardTrashPanda.com. Whatever. Anyways, kind of interesting, but I hadn't heard much about appeal. And yes, it has been approved. You would think that RFK Jr. and company would be trying to stop that, but I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe there's too much money involved. It is Gates, after all. All right, and then Trump plans to send Ukraine weapons via NATO allies. Yes, they're going to be increasing the weapons, apparently, going to the Ukraine. President Trump is planning to sell weapons to NATO allies with the understanding that they will then provide them to Ukraine. Three sources familiar with the discussion tells Axios. Confirmed that in an interview on Thursday. More weapons to Ukraine. They love the war. I thought he was going to stop the war in Ukraine, wasn't he? Didn't he say he was going to have it stopped before he even takes office? Oh, wait, they're ramping it up. Imagine that. Imagine that. Imagine my shock. Actually, not at all. I thought this one was kind of interesting. You don't see too many headlines with the old king here, but this one came across on humanevents.com. King Charles rebrands illegal immigration as irregular migration during a banquet with French President Macron and his husband/wife. King Charles referred to the ongoing crisis of illegal immigration as, quote, irregular migration, while speaking at a banquet alongside French President Emmanuel Macron yesterday. In prepared remarks, King said, quote, our security services and police will go further still to protect us against the profound challenges of terrorism, organized crime, cyber attacks, and, of course, irregular migration. He's calling it irregular migration. Well, he is, at least to some degree, at fault for the irregular migration. He could help put an end to it if he wanted to, but does he? No, of course not. Because, again, it's okay when he does it. He's the soon-to-be Antichrist, after all, right? Anyway, thought that was kind of strange. That's on humanevents.com, which I think is, here it is, Jack Posobiec's website. So anyway, kind of interesting. Yeah, irregular migration. It's definitely that, isn't it? All right, the MSN article I found, Camp Mystic's owner warned of floods for decades, and then the river killed him. Dick Eastland warned for decades about the hidden dangers of the beautiful but volatile Guadalupe River, a peril he saw firsthand while running his family's youth camp alongside its banks. Eastland saw floods damage Camp Mystic again and again. I wonder why he didn't move it. I guess he couldn't for some reason. And his pregnant wife was even airlifted to a hospital while the camp in Central Texas was cut off by floodwaters. That was probably a long time ago. He successfully pushed for a new flood warning system after 10 children at a nearby camp were swept to their deaths in 1987. And in recent years, served on the board of the local river authority as it supported renewed efforts to improve warnings on the Guadalupe River. The river is beautiful, Eastland told the Austin American Statesman in 1990, but you have to respect it. But after 27 people were killed at Camp Mystic in last week's cataclysmic flooding, along with Eastland himself, who died while trying to rescue his young campers, the scale of the tragedy highlights potential missed opportunities by Camp Mystic's owners and government officials to better mitigate those risks. So you can see the building here. I wasn't sure how close it was, but you can see the building and its proximity to the river. It's right there. So anyway, very sad. It's a little too late, I guess, to be wondering about that. And of course, he paid the ultimate price, but a sad situation for sure. Anyway, that's a MSN article. And then I guess you consider this a bit of good news. X reinstates Douglas Mackey's meme account following acquittal. So the good news isn't just that he got his X account restored, it's that he was acquitted. This is the guy who had been basically destined for jail here due to a Hillary Clinton meme that he had posted a while back. Social media platform X on Thursday reinstated Douglas Mackey's meme account following the overturning of his conviction in an election case. As of press time, the Ricky Vaughn 99 account was active and no longer subject to platform restrictions. The account had not posted since 2016 when the platform was still Twitter. That would be because it was locked. The account was at the center of Mackey's case as it was the account through which he had posted a meme jokingly encouraging supporters of then presidential candidate Hillary Clinton to cast their votes by text. That's all he did. And we covered this months and months ago when this all came up. That's all he did. He jokingly encouraged supporters of Hillary Clinton to cast their votes by text. Who would be dumb enough to believe that? Not even a Hillary Clinton voter would believe that. And yet, this guy was going to jail because of it. Mackey was convicted of interfering in the election of 2023, interfering in the election in 2023, meaning the 2016 election. Though the court stayed his sentence pending his appeal, the Second Circuit on Wednesday overturned his conviction, arguing that the evidence was insufficient to prove that he knowingly agreed to join the charged conspiracy. We agree. Accordingly, we reverse Mackey's conviction and remand the case to the district court with instructions to enter a judgment of acquittal. So that is good news. So Douglas Mackey is going to be a free man and not have to face jail due to literally a meme about Hillary Clinton, which, hopefully he will get some bodyguards and some security now, because he could end up on the Clinton body count numbers if he's not careful. If he's not going to be protected in jail, he's probably going to need to protect himself from Hillary and company. Anyway, a little side thought there, but that's on just the news. I thought that was some good news for him, at least. That's good news, and good news for free speech in general, I suppose. I thought this one was kind of strange. Futuristic airport makes major cuts to passenger wait times with wild shotgun cartridge boarding system. Shotgun cartridge boarding system. So I saw that and I'm like, what in the world is going on here? They're real jet setters. Florida automaker Jovari plans to revolutionize air travel with a cutting-edge boarding system that loads passengers onto planes in giant cylindrical cartridges, among other improvements. That sounds nice, doesn't it? A video of the so-called airport of the future is currently taking off on Instagram. Dubbed Jovari Jet Speed, the expeditious system allegedly has the potential to slash millions of hours and billions of expenses from air travel, a narrator declares in the clip. So here's how the planes would work. And keep in mind, these planes are going to be built by Boeing, right? And the tail end of these planes flip up. What could possibly go wrong? The tail ends flip up and you load in the cartridge full of people. So here you see the plane sitting on the tarmac. The back end of the plane, I guess, is it's on a huge hinge or something, and it opens up and they slide in this cartridge that has all the seating and all the people in it already. They slide that into the plane, so you don't have you're loading onto the your seat in the cartridge while you're still in the airport. You're getting on your seat, you're getting in your seat and stowing your luggage and stuff while you're still in the airport, and they shuttle you then into the plane. What could possibly go wrong? So anyway, here's a close-up here. One of the cabin cartridges depicted in the video. So you can see people getting into their seats here, and it's going to then put this whole cartridge of seats into the plane. That's the idea. Thought that was pretty wild. I don't know that this will actually ever happen. I kind of have my doubts. It's a good idea, but I just can't imagine Boeing being able to get that right. Imagine what happens when these little hinges start breaking and then the tail falls off and the cartridge slides out and the passengers just plunge to their death 40,000 feet. Wouldn't that be nice? Maybe they'll provide some parachutes or something. I don't know. I just thought that was really strange. That's a New York Post article. All right, and then speaking of planes, a plane crash today. Yet again, a light aircraft went down soon after taking off from London's Southend Airport. A Beechcraft B-200 aircraft has crashed in Essex, UK, soon after taking off from London's Southend Airport. The incident took place around 4 o'clock local time on Sunday. And let's see here. Clips show plumes of thick black smoke rising into the sky from a field near the runway. I'm looking to see if anyone was injured or what happened exactly. The number of people on board the small passenger plane remains unclear. So that's the time of this article. Let me do a refresh here. See if anything's updated. Doesn't look like it. Number of people on board the small plane remains unclear. Southend Airport as well as the Essex police confirmed the incident, but as yet there have been no confirmation of casualties. So it's just some details as to what happened in the moments thereafter, but it doesn't really say. At least not in this article. So that is an RT article, and you would think if there would have been any casualties that it would have been mentioned in this article, but it doesn't seem to be. And as far as this plane goes, a Beechcraft B-200 aircraft. Let's do a quick search here and see how big a plane that is. Okay. So this is an article about that. Beechcraft King Air B-200 crashes after takeoff from London Southend Airport. It doesn't look like it would have too many people. Oh, here, it can carry more than 20. So it's about 20 people, I guess. So I'm not sure on this particular crash if anyone was hurt or killed or not. Let's hope not. But anyways, I just wanted to point that out just because it seems like we're reporting on plane crashes literally every single week. So yet another one. All right, informationliberation.com. Trump, let's not waste time and energy on Jeffrey Epstein, somebody that nobody cares about. Yeah, well, you want to bet? I think he's wrong about that. I think he wants to cover it up, don't you? Gallup poll suggests Trump has squandered historic mandate for mass deportations. Trump has squandered his mandate for mass deportations with his focus on rounding up critics of Israel and staging show of force stunts to hide the fact deportations are lacking, if a new Gallup poll is to be believed. Netanyahu lays groundwork for additional strikes on Iran. We didn't deal with the enriched uranium. So there you go. We knew this was coming, didn't we? They didn't get it, and we have to bomb Iran more. Israeli criminal Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu laid the groundwork for additional strikes on Iran in an interview with Fox Business on Wednesday, saying, "The one thing that we didn't deal with is Iran's stockpiles of enriched uranium." So, meaning the Americans missed, and we got to go hit them again. That's what he means. Trump administration used Israeli doxing website Canary Mission to target Israel's critics for deportation. U.S. sanctions UN Special Reporter Francesca Albanese over criticism of Israel. So you see where we're going here with all this. You can't criticize Israel. Trump lashes out at reporter over Epstein question, "Are you still talking about Epstein?" Which we heard that clip at the beginning of the show tonight in the Reese report. The DOJ and the FBI say there was no evidence Jeffrey Epstein blackmailed anyone and kept the client list or was murdered. Yeah. So Ghislaine Maxwell serving 20 years currently for literal sex trafficking to no clients. That's what we're supposed to believe. Yeah. I think that's called gaslighting. It doesn't exist. You're crazy. Yeah. I guess so. Trump expands emergency declaration after visiting Texas flood sites. So I was looking to see what the newer numbers here for the Texas flood were. At least 121 people were killed by flash flooding that struck late last week, with more than 160 people still missing as of Friday. So 121 killed for sure, and then 160 still missing. Wow. Camp Mystic, 27 campers were lost. So anyway, Trump's finally on the ground there. They're trying to do something, it looks like, but it sure took them a while. Immigration agents shot at during California raid. Now this is the one we mentioned earlier raiding the weed farms in California. But yeah, they're literally getting shot at now. ICE agents. Thought this one was pretty weird. Italian Nutella, you've heard of them, right? Nutella maker buys iconic cereal company Kellogg. The Ferrero Group on Wednesday said that it finalized an agreement with W.K. Kellogg Company to acquire the nearly 120-year-old American firm. Ferrero will pay $23 per share for a total sale price of about $3.1 billion. The Italian company will take control of all 6 of Kellogg's manufacturing plants and the marketing and distribution of its cereals throughout the U.S., Canada, and the Caribbean. Once the transaction is complete, shares of Kellogg's stock will not be traded on the New York Stock Exchange. Wow. So I wonder if they're making it private or something. Kellogg's was founded in 1906, more than a decade after he developed cornflakes. W.K. Kellogg developed cornflakes. The company now produces well-known cereals including Rice Krispies, Fruit Loops, Raisin Bran, and Frosted Flakes. Company leaders in the 1930s founded the W.K. Kellogg Foundation to promote nutrition. How about that? Isn't that ironic? And education for families and children. In 1969, astronauts with NASA took Kellogg's cereal aboard Apollo 11 trip to the moon. Oh, okay. So we've got more lies. So we've got Kellogg's as, quote, healthy food, and then also Kellogg's with, quote, astronauts on the moon. So nothing but lies. Okay. Yeah, we're supposed to believe that. But anyway, Nutella's going to own it, and I guess, I don't know, take it private is what it looks like to me. Anyway, so enjoy your Frosted Flakes while you can. Yeah. Anyway, that's on WNG.org. And then, let's see. Got a few RT articles. Trump denies cover-up in Epstein case. U.S. President has urged supporters not to spread speculation about the alleged list of sex offenders' clients. Yes, don't talk about it. It didn't happen, and you're crazy. Anyway, let's look and see if there's anything new here. Probably not. That's a RT article. So I guess we're supposed to believe the gaslighting until they tell us otherwise. Texas man arrested for Trump death threats. This is a different guy, I guess. Texas man was arrested in the U.S. on Thursday for allegedly threatening to kill Trump, making a reference to a prior assassination attempt. Robert Herrera, 52, allegedly made the comment on a local news outlet's Facebook page. Oh, that was smart. About the presidential visit, I guess, to Texas there. The DOJ wrote on Friday, using the handle Robert Herrera, he wrote, "I won't miss," quote unquote, alongside a photo of Trump immediately after the 2024 shooting in Butler. Yeah, well, I guess the FBI won't miss either. Anyway, they apparently stopped him before he could do anything. Not that he was going to, but he certainly threatened, and you just never know. Another commentator challenged his statement, to which he allegedly responded, "I'll just come for you." So, wow. So he's going after Trump and the commenter, I guess. He posted a photograph of an assault rifle and loaded magazines. So this guy was definitely not firing on all cylinders there. Pretty wild. Wonder how many of these things they stop every week. Stuff that we don't ever hear about even. Preliminary report on Air India Boeing crash has been released. So you guys remember the Air India Dreamliner crash? Killed 242 people. The probe has found that, get this, both engines of the plane shut down mid-air after the fuel supply was cut by the valves that were switched off. Somebody literally turned it off in mid-flight as it was taking off. They turned off the fuel supply. First of all, why is there a fuel supply off switch on an airplane? I don't know. Last month's Air India Boeing 787 Dreamliner crash was caused by the fuel supply to the engines being shut off, a preliminary report by India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau found. The UK-bound plane carrying 242 people crashed into a residential area in Ahmedabad shortly after taking off on June 12th. Only one person on board survived. Remember, he was the guy that was either thrown out or jumped out of the plane and literally walked away. Everyone else was killed. 19 people on the ground were also killed. So 242 people on board the plane plus another 19 on the ground. According to the report released on Saturday, cockpit switches controlling the fuel supply were moved to the cut-off position seconds after takeoff, shutting off the fuel to both engines. Don't planes fly better with fuel? So this had to be pilot error, it seems to me. I mean, unless somebody was trying to kill himself and everyone on the plane, which seems unlikely. The report states that the cockpit voice recorder says one of the pilots is heard asking why the fuel switch was cut off. The other pilot responded that he did not do so. The report says, noting that seconds after the exchange, the plane began losing altitude. One engine restarted when the switches were turned back on, but the plane continued to descend, and one of the pilots issued a mayday call. The plane was only airborne for 32 seconds and traveled 0.9 nautical miles before it crashed. Says the report does not state whether the switches were manually or accidentally flipped. It does not attribute the remarks it mentions to either the captain or the first officer, nor does it identify who issued the distress call. So there's still a lot of question marks here. The video that we watched, I don't know if you guys were here when we watched the video of the guy who was a pilot doing an analysis of what he thought caused the crash, was saying it had to do with the landing gear still being down, causing drag on the plane so that they couldn't get up to altitude. But this is saying that they literally shut the gas off. They turned off the fuel. Isn't that crazy? Boeing has faced growing scrutiny over safety issues in recent years. No kidding. Its 737 MAX plane was grounded around the world from 2019 to 20, following two fatal crashes in Indonesia and Ethiopia that killed 346 people. So it could be a Boeing issue here versus pilot error. It says experts earlier cited potential crew error, pilot error, mechanical failure, or incorrect takeoff settings as possible causes of the tragedy. So very sad, but we are getting, I guess, a little closer here to hearing what the reason for this is. But yeah, fuel supply was cut off. Wow. That is not something you hear about very often. All right, let's see here. So I thought this one was kind of interesting. It's probably worth just watching this. This is a post from Wall Street Apes, which is a pretty well-known Twitter account. I'll just let you guys hear it. That was kind of interesting. The guy's, I don't know, you couldn't really call it an accent, I don't think, but the way he talks is a little funny, kind of makes it more of a funny type video, but here you go.
Mass deportations unironically solve every single problem in society without fail and without exception. It is actually the case that if you just begin to deport people and do that at scale, society gets better with no downsides. Like, from a sociological perspective, mass deportations are a magic wand that make the impossible things just appear. Whenever you deport an undocumented family, that's the equivalent of just making a home appear out of thin air. No other policy can do that. Whenever you deport an undocumented family, that's like magically expanding the roads, magically building more hospitals, magically freeing up more hospital spaces, magically making more school places appear out of thin air with no downsides. Like, millennials come on here and be like, oh, I'll never own a home. Because I'll never own a home, I'll never start a family. We can make like 15 million homes appear out of thin air. In about a month, if we really wanted to. Like, do you think the magic deportation fairy godmother making a home literally appear in your lap, do you think that would change your life in any meaningful, tangible way? To me, that feels like a preferable reality than tomatoes being 0.2% cheaper.
Okay, so there you go, from the expert, I guess. I just thought his sort of snobby voice was kind of funny. But that's what he's saying about mass deportations. Unironically solve every single problem in society without fail and without exception. Well, maybe not everyone, but pretty wild. So that was kind of funny. Wanted to share that with you guys. And then, let's see, this one also on X. 2 hours after Epstein's body was found on August 10th, 2019, which, by the way, was during the first Trump administration. Take that for what it's worth. This message was posted to 8chan from inside the Metropolitan Correctional Center. So did you guys know about this? Soon after this post went public, the 8chan site was taken down permanently by Cloudflare. Cloudflare is a well-known web host. So the site was taken down after this post. Here's what the post said. And here is a screenshot of the original post right here. Not saying, now this is a direct quote here from the post. Not saying anything after this. Please do not try to dox me, but last night after the 4:15 a.m. count, they took him to medical in a wheelchair, front cuffed, but not one triage nurse says that they spoke to him. Next thing we know, a trip van shows up, ? We do not do releases on the weekends unless a judge orders it. Next thing we know, he's put in a single man cell and hangs himself? ? Here's the thing. The trip van did not sign in, and we did not record the plate number, and a guy in a green dress military outfit was in the back of the van, according to the tower guy who let him through the gate. You guys, I am shaking right now, but I think they switched him out. Meaning, Jeffrey Epstein. So that was the post. That post happened 2 hours after Jeffrey Epstein's body was found. That message was posted on 8chan, and then the website was taken down permanently by Cloudflare. So he's saying here there was a military person in the trip van and did not record the plate number, and the tower guy let them through the gate and remembers the person in a green military outfit, and they think that they switched him out, meaning Jeffrey Epstein, for someone else that looked just like him. I'm tending to think that that is probably exactly what happened. Looks more like Fauci than Epstein. Anyway, yeah, so the question is, did he really die? And a lot of people think not. And when I played the Virginia Giuffre, I guess you could say it was a Dead Man Switch. When we play that in a little bit here, I think that's coming up here. She mentions it. But before we do that, let me look at this one. This is a pretty interesting Substack. I think in order to give you guys some perspective, we probably need to read this whole thing, or at least most of it. So kick back and just wait for me to read this for you. I think this will give you some perspective. Now, this is Chris Hedges' report. I don't know who Chris Hedges is, but I don't think he's just making this up. He's got a lot of really interesting details here through the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing. And get a load of this picture. Yikes. Trump, Epstein, and the deep state. So this is where, I've kind of been someone who believed that, Trump may have been involved. He certainly did know Epstein. He may have been involved in the whole thing, but there was no real evidence to say that he did, and if there was, they probably would have, they already hate this guy, they already would have used that evidence against him. Well, maybe not. Maybe not. And let's read this article and see what Chris Hedges says here on Substack. The Trump administration's refusal to release the Epstein files and videos is done not only to protect Trump, but the ruling class. They all belong to the same club. Yeah, and we ain't in it, right? This picture here is American Satricon by Mr. Fish. The refusal by the Trump administration to release the files and videos amassed during investigations into the activities of the pedophile Jeffrey Epstein should put to rest the absurd idea embraced by Trump supporters and gullible liberals that Trump will dismantle the deep state. Trump is part of, and it has long been part of, the repugnant cabal of politicians, Democrat and Republican, billionaires and celebrities who look at us, and often underage girls and boys, as commodities to exploit for profit or pleasure. The list of those who were in Epstein's orbit is a who's who of the rich and famous. They include not only Trump, but Bill Clinton, who allegedly took a trip to Thailand with Epstein, Prince Andrew, Bill Gates, hedge fund billionaire Glenn Dubin, former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, former Secretary of the Treasury and former president of Harvard University Larry Summers, cognitive psychologist and author Steven Pinker, Alan Dershowitz, who's a well-known attorney, billionaire and Victoria's Secret CEO Leslie Wexner, the former Barclays banker Jess Staley, former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, the magician David Copperfield, who I just saw when we were in Vegas back at the beginning of the year. So magician David Copperfield, actor Kevin Spacey, former CIA director Bill Burns, real estate mogul Mort Zuckerman, former Maine Senator George Mitchell, and disgraced Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein, who reveled in Epstein's perpetual bacchanalia, which is like a Roman drinking fest, like beer fest kind of thing. They also include law firms and high-priced attorneys, federal and state prosecutors, private investigators, personal assistants, publicists, servants, and drivers. They include the numerous procurers and pimps, including Epstein's girlfriend and daughter of Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell, who I would add, personally, after looking into this a little more, this is just a little sidebar here. Robert Maxwell was a well-known Israeli spy. He worked for Mossad. Ghislaine Maxwell was his daughter. I personally think that Jeffrey Epstein may have been working for Ghislaine Maxwell. She may have been the real kingpin here, but there's no way to know. They include the media and politicians who ruthlessly discredited and silenced the victims and strong-armed anyone, including a handful of intrepid reporters, seeking to expose Epstein's crimes and circle of accomplices. There's a lot that remains hidden, but there are some things that we know. Epstein installed hidden cameras in his opulent residences on his private Caribbean island, Little St. James, to capture his high-powered friends engaging in sexual romps and abuse of teenage and underage girls and boys. The recordings were blackmail gold. Were they part of an intelligence operation on behalf of the Israeli Mossad? Or were they used to ensure that Epstein had a steady source of investors who funneled him millions of dollars to avoid being outed? I think probably it was both, don't you? Yeah, or were they used for both? He shuttled underage girls between New York and Palm Beach on his private jet, the Lolita Express, which was allegedly outfitted with a bed for group sex. His coterie of famous friends, including Clinton and Trump, are recorded as traveling on the jet numerous times on released flight logs, although many other flight logs have disappeared. I would say conveniently so. Epstein's videos are in the vaults of the FBI along with detailed evidence that would rip back the veil on the sexual proclivities and callousness of the powerful. I doubt there is a client list, as Attorney General Pam Bondi claims. There is also no single Epstein file. The investigative material amassed in Epstein fills many, many boxes, which would bury Bondi's desk and probably, if collected in one room, dominate most of the space in her office. Yeah, I've heard that it was entire buildings full of stuff, pretty much, as far as the videotapes and all of the, recordings part of it. Did Epstein commit suicide, as the official autopsy report claims, by hanging himself in his jail cell on August 10th, 2019 at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York, or was he murdered? Well, we just looked at that post from that was on 8chan, right? And it's sounding to me like he was swapped out. But anyway, since the cameras recording activity in his cell that night were not functional, we do not know. Michael Baden, a forensic pathologist hired by Epstein's brother, who served as chief medical examiner for New York City and was also present at the autopsy, says he believes Epstein's autopsy suggests homicide. So yes, the person that was killed was murdered. The way his neck was broken and stuff couldn't have been from the hanging. The particular way that the bones in his neck were broken had to have been from strangulation. That has all come out. The Epstein case is important because it implodes the fiction of deep divisions between Democrats who had no more interest in releasing the Epstein files than Trump and the Republicans. They belong to the same club. It exposes how the courts and law enforcement agencies collude to shield powerful figures who engage in crimes. It lays bare the depravity of our exhibitionist ruling class, accountable to no one, free to violate, plunder, loot, and prey on the weak and the vulnerable. It is the tawdry record of our oligarchic masters who lack the capacity for shame or guilt, whether dressed up as Donald Trump or Joe Biden. This class of ruling parasites was parodied in the first century satirical novel Satyricon by Gaius Arbiter, when it was written during the reigns of Caligula, Claudius, and Nero. As in Satyricon, Epstein's circle was dominated by pseudo-intellectuals, pretentious buffoons, grifters, con artists, petty criminals, the insatiable rich, and the sexually depraved. Epstein and his inner circle routinely engaged in sexual perversions of Petronian proportions, as the Miami Herald investigative reporter Julie Brown, whose dogged reporting was largely responsible for reopening the federal investigation into Epstein and Maxwell, documents in her book called The Perversion of Justice, the Jeffrey Epstein Story. As Brown writes, in 2016, an anonymous woman using the pseudonym Kate Johnson, remember that name? Kate Johnson, pseudonym, filed a civil complaint in a federal court in California alleging that she was raped by Trump and Epstein when she was 13 over a 4-month period from June to September 1994. I loudly pleaded with Trump to stop, she said, in the lawsuit about being raped. Trump responded to my pleas by violently striking me in the face with his open hand and screaming that he could do whatever he wanted. Brown continues, Johnson said, again, this girl, who was 13 at the time, said that Epstein invited her to a series of underage sex parties at his New York mansion, where she met Trump. Enticed by promises of money and modeling opportunities, Johnson said she was forced to have sex with Trump several times, including once with another girl, 12 years old, whom she labeled Marie Doe. Marie Doe. Trump demanded oral, the lawsuit said, and afterwards he pushed both minors away while angrily berating them for the poor quality of the performance, according to the lawsuit. Filed April 26th in California. Afterward, when Epstein learned that Trump had taken Johnson's virginity Epstein allegedly attempted to strike her about the head with his closed fists, angry he had not been the one to take her virginity. Johnson claimed that both men threatened to harm her and her family if she ever revealed what had happened. So again, this is a lot of details. You think it could have just been made up? Because it sounds pretty legit here. The lawsuit states that Trump did not take part in Epstein's orgies, but liked to watch. And often, while the 13-year-old Kate Johnson gave him a hand, you know what? It appears Trump was able to quash the lawsuit by buying her silence. She has since disappeared. So Kate Johnson has disappeared. In 2008, Alex Acosta, who at the time was the U.S. Attorney and Southern District of Florida, for the Southern District of Florida, negotiated a plea deal for Epstein. The deal granted immunity from all federal criminal charges to Epstein, 4 named co-conspirators, and any unnamed potential co-conspirators. The agreement shut down the FBI probe into whether there were more victims and other powerful figures who took part in Epstein's sex crimes. It halted the investigation and sealed the indictment. Trump, in what many consider an act of gratitude, appointed Acosta as Secretary of Labor in his first term. Trump contemplated pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell after she was arrested in July of 2020, fearing she would reveal details of his decades-long friendship with Epstein. Decades long, according to Trump biographer Michael Wolff. In July 2022, she was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Epstein's closest relationship in life was with Donald Trump. These were 2 guys joined at the hip for a good 15 years. They did everything together. Wolf told host Joanna Coles on the Daily Beast podcast. Well, the Daily Beast is a liberal rag, but still. And this is from sharing, pursuing women, hunting women, sharing at least one girlfriend for at least a year in this kind of rich guy relationship with each other's planes. So Epstein advising Trump on how to cheat on his taxes. The legal anomalies, including the disappearance of massive amounts of evidence incriminating Epstein, saw Epstein avoid federal sex trafficking charges in 2007 when his attorneys negotiated a secret plea deal with Acosta. He was able to plead guilty to lesser state charges of soliciting a minor for prostitution. And then it goes on to talk about how Alan Dershowitz is connected and all that, which we won't get into that. Mostly I wanted to mention about all of these details between Epstein and Trump and stuff that nobody really knew about. And, you know, going back to what Elon Musk said in his tweet, his angry tweet when he was mad at Trump a few weeks ago, he since deleted the tweet, but he said that the reason that Trump didn't want that information to come out was because he was on the list. Maybe he knew what he was talking about. That's kind of what I'm getting at here. The Epstein story is a window into the moral bankruptcy, hedonism, and greed of the ruling class. This crosses political lines. It's the common denominator between Democrat politicians such as Bill Clinton, philanthropists such as Bill Gates and the billionaire class, and Trump. They are one class of predators and grifters. It is not only girls and women they exploit, but all of us. So anyway, there's more to this. I didn't read the entire thing, but we read and covered most of that. But that is on this Substack post. I do think that he's got a lot of details here that he couldn't just be making up out of whole cloth, personally. And if you doubt me on the pictures, you can kind of see here. Now, these are just a few still shots of him and Epstein together. Obviously, these top ones where he's got a pink tie on, that's all from the same meeting here. But here are other pictures of Trump with either Maxwell or with Epstein. So there's several here, and then in the middle of the picture collage it says, "Stop talking about Epstein." Well, maybe we now know why he wants us to stop talking about Epstein. And of course, we've all heard the rumors about Melania being hooked up with Trump through Jeffrey Epstein, which was mentioned again in the Reese report at the beginning of the show tonight. So Interesting collage, huh? Well, here is the Virginia Giuffre piece that I wanted to play for you guys. It's not very long, but this is the dead man switch that I came across earlier today, and I think it will help clear a few things up. And note that the idea here that Epstein did not die is mentioned in this dead man switch here from Virginia.
If you're watching this, it means they got me. My dead man switch activated automatically after I missed 2 scheduled check-ins. I had it set up months ago because I knew this day was coming. I did not die by accident. I was murdered to keep their secrets buried. My name is Virginia Louise Giuffre. I was one of Jeffrey Epstein's victims. I survived Little St. James, but survival came at a price. I saw too much, knew too much. And now they've silenced me. But it's too late for them. They thought killing me would bury their secrets, but this video is going to a few organizations I trust, ones that have been exposing the truth for decades. You know who you are. It's your job to continue this fight. I was 16 when they reeled me in. I worked at Mar-a-Lago, folding towels, cleaning lockers. My father kept the tennis courts immaculate. We were just working folks trying to scrape by. Trump, he was around, but he was never the threat. The real predator was Ghislaine Maxwell, prim and proper, smiling, promising to teach me massage therapy at the Pink Mansion in Palm Beach. I had no idea I was being fed into a nightmare machine. Epstein's Island was hell disguised as paradise. You've heard some names linked to him, but those are just the sacrificial pawns. The real players, the ones they've protected at all costs, are still hiding in plain sight. I'll name 2 now. The first, a former U.S. President, Barack Obama. Publicly, he's revered. Privately, he was one of the worst. He wasn't there for the girls. He was there for the island boys. Young boys, trafficked and groomed. I saw him more times than I can count, always without his Secret Service detail, sometimes with his Hollywood friends, George Clooney and Tom Hanks. I still have nightmares about them, arrogant and drunk on power, slinking into the cabanas with kids barely out of childhood. The second, Bill Gates, the billionaire philanthropist, loved by the media, hailed as a savior. We called him the benefactor, and we used to dread seeing him naked. But he didn't come to party. He came to experiment. Genetic experiments, human experiments. I saw him inject a young girl with something they said was a genetic enhancement. She was younger than me, strapped to a table, terrified, treated like a lab rat while they muttered about seeding the future of the species. These men think they are gods, playing with life like it was theirs to own. I'm telling you now, Epstein isn't dead. They staged his death because he was too valuable. He held blackmail on some of the most powerful people on earth. Files, videos, confessions. They couldn't risk him talking, but they also couldn't risk him gone, so they hid him. Stashed him under the protection of the same elite who once paid him to supply them with flesh. And they thought killing me would stop this from coming out. They were wrong, and there is so much more to come. Hidden servers, encrypted drives, witness testimonies. It's all going to hit the light. This video is just the first detonation. The data drops are timed and automatic. They are going to people who can make a difference, and nobody can stop it now. Not even the law enforcement agencies in the US and UK, the same ones that buried the evidence I handed them, can stop this truth from getting out. If you're watching this, you are the resistance. Don't let my death be just another headline. Burn their lies to the ground. Make the world see the monsters behind the masks. And to any survivors out there, don't give up. We're in this together. They can't kill us all. Make them pay.
There you have it. There you have it from Miss Giuffre's own mouth. And I think that's absolutely mind-blowing. Miss Susan here says, my goosebumps have goosebumps right now. Yeah, so this is going to be coming out even more so. So this is the first that I've personally come across as far as the dead man switch from Virginia. And sounds like there'll be others. I just thought it was really interesting. I just put in, I don't know, a few hours worth of work before the show tonight finding all this stuff. And if I can find it, anybody can find it. It is there. So it's just a matter of connecting the dots. Personally, I was hoping that Trump was not involved in all of the Epstein stuff. It turns out that not only was he involved, he was a main actor in the whole series of things that happened, it looks like. And that is why he's hiding it. That's why it's being covered up. So I think that this may very well bring down his administration. It's a very good chance of that happening. And people are not going to buy this. They're not going to believe the gaslighting, and it's not going to go away. It's only going to get bigger. So it's up to us to make sure it gets bigger, because people like this do not need to be in charge. Yes, he's done some good things. I will give him credit. He's closed the border. That was the number one reason that I personally voted for the guy. To close the border, he has done that. And now it's a matter of, at some point, facing God for what you do. And I think that that will be soon, Who knows if he lives through his entire term. Hopefully he will, and face consequences for his actions. But it appears to me that he was actively involved in a lot of this Epstein stuff. So that is bad news, but it's good that the truth comes out. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. I think I've got a few other tabs here pulled up on this whole thing tonight, so we'll be coming back to that. But I just thought it was pretty incredible. And her information there about Epstein and everything that she talked about, I thought was really good information. And it all makes a lot of sense when you hear it from her perspective. Andrew Torba, who is the founder of, you may have heard of the platform called Gab. Andrew Torba is who this guy is that tweeted this. You want mass deportations? Sorry, a Jewish judge says no. You want no more foreign wars? Sorry, Israel needs us to bomb Iran. You want Israel's blackmail child sex ring investigated and exposed? Sorry, Bibi stopped by and said, no way. So, Andrew Torba kind of sums it up a little bit here. Now, Alex seems to think, and I had up till now, really up till today, believed him that Trump probably wasn't really involved in all of the Epstein stuff. And because Alex does do his research, I think Alex is wrong on this. I do think that the Substack that I read quite a bit of a little while ago really helped detail things and would help explain, in my opinion at least, why Trump would want this whole thing covered up. And, you could even take it to the extreme, perhaps, being how Epstein supposedly, quote, died during his first administration, maybe Trump had something to do with Epstein's disappearance. Now, I personally don't think Epstein is dead. I have thought that for some time, but I hadn't really seen it until Virginia Giuffre's testimony in her Dead Man Switch, and then also the 8chan thing that I read earlier. I didn't know about those two things before this afternoon when I was looking into all of this stuff. So I think personally that it helps explain that, yes, indeed, Epstein is still alive. He's being kept somewhere. He's too valuable to them for them to have let him be killed or hang himself, quote unquote. And this guy that you're seeing on your screen here, I did not realize was part of this whole thing. But he liked the little cabana guys. He liked the cabana boys. Barack Insane Obama. So it turns out he is also active in this whole cover-up because he doesn't want that information to get out. I bet Trump knows exactly where Epstein is. Emily says, yeah, I think you're right. I think he does too. Explosive report, Obama was the sleeper cell. Mamdani is the detonator to collapse America. So back to Mamdani. We talked about him near the beginning of the show tonight when we were mentioning that he is the leading candidate in the mayoral race in New York City. Mamdani is the leading Democrat candidate at this point. He may very well be elected as mayor of New York City. And the other crazy thing is, according to the article that I read a little bit ago, the IRS has decided, we're just going to let churches say anything that they want as far as electing politicians, which puts it right in the hands of the mosques in New York City, who will have a huge say then in Mamdani's election to the mayoral spot in New York City. Just my opinion. The fruits of his deception are visible for anyone who dares to see through the smokescreen of media propaganda and elite manipulation. Explosive report. Obama was the sleeper cell. Mamdani is the detonator to collapse America. If you didn't know who Mamdani is, this is him. Zohran Mamdani. I've mentioned him several times lately on this show. A new explosive report is alleging the same deep state forces that brought Barack Obama to the U.S. presidency are responsible for the meteoric rise of Zohran Mamdani, the socialist who is now the Democrat nominee for New York City mayor. Says Barack Obama was never just a president, he was a weapon, fully and carefully installed, heavily protected, and strategically unleashed to dismantle the American Republic from within. He did a pretty darn good job, don't you think? Now, on July 6, 2025, the fruits of his deception are visible for anyone who dares to see through the smokescreen of media propaganda and elite manipulation. And the clearest product of his globalist engineered legacy is Zohran Mamdani, a foreign-born socialist radical openly advocating the destruction of capitalism, national identity, and constitutional law. The report says that while Trump is still working to undo the devastation from the Obama years, Mamdani emerges as the next key agent in the deep state's unrelenting war against America. Make no mistake, this is a continuation of the same covert operation. What Obama began in secret, Mamdani now carries forward openly. And that's the most dangerous part. Here's the pictures of Barack here. White then probes into Obama's pre-presidential background, claiming the politician was groomed for decades by Marxists, foreign ideologues, and anti-American globalists, which is all stuff that we'd heard of. I'm talking about Frank Marshall Davis, who was a card-carrying communist. That was his father figure. His stepfather in Indonesia raised him in Islam. His early years were spent absorbing foreign ideologies, not American principles. By the time he returned to the U.S., he was already radicalized and fully embedded in anti-Western thought. This is a younger Barack Obama smoking marijuana, according to these pictures. White says Obama's entry into U.S. politics was orchestrated with the help of George Soros' network and elite think tanks, such as the Brookings Institution, to polish script and market him like a corporate product. So anyway, they're saying Mamdani is next. So obviously, if that's the case, they will want him to go from New York to potential president of the U.S. That would seem to be where it was headed. So I just thought I would point that out. So don't be surprised if this dude is the next mayor of New York City, and we'll see where he goes from there, but not looking good. Just wanted to put that on your radar. That one's on WorldNet Daily. That's where that is. So if you're not on the Substack list for this show, make sure you're on that mailing list so that I can send you all the links for the show when it all is said and done. I'll send out the links probably Tuesday. Could be Wednesday. Depends on my schedule. So anyway, make sure you're on that list. diamonddisc.substack.com. It's in the upper right corner up there in the black box. Thought this was interesting. Nick Fuentes, he's a little bit of a lightning rod. I personally like a lot of what he says, and he's super smart for somebody who is 26, something like that. He's an interesting guy. He says, here's a golden age update. You remember the Trump administration's golden age? Well, this is a little update on how we're doing in the progress of the golden age. Well, we started by bombing Iran. Then we have the total Epstein cover-up. Citizenship revoked for anti-Semites. No mass deportations. Amnesty for illegal farm workers. That actually hasn't happened quite yet, but it's on the verge. More weapons for Ukraine. $3 trillion added to the debt. Corporate tax cuts extended. And 127,000 H-1B Indians. Victory. That's how you define victory. But the border's closed. Yeah, so anyway, Nick Fuentes. That's a screenshot from one of his tweets or X posts. Revealed Austin, Texas fire chief who denied resources ahead of Texas flooding prioritized increasing diversity. So another DEI person here. The Austin Firefighters Association intends to hold a vote of no confidence on Fire Chief Joel Baker over his failure to deploy advanced teams to flood-ravaged Kerr County ahead of the destruction. Now it has been revealed that Baker, the first black fire chief in Austin, prioritized diversity goals shortly after coming onto the job. He's been accused of not deploying Austin's specialized teams ahead of the destruction, despite having been asked by the state to do so, because Texas was delayed in reimbursing the department for $800,000 in past deployments. In 2020, just after 1 year on the job, it became clear that diversity goals were paramount. After taking over Austin's department of about 1,100 firefighters, he said that he didn't want people to dwell on me being the first African-American fire chief, because that's not important. What's important is that I'm not the last African-American fire chief. One of his goals, he said, was to really increase the diversity at the Austin Fire Department. It needs to reflect more on the community we serve, because I believe the youth of Austin and our youth in general, you will be what you see those young African Americans, young Latinos, people in the Asian community or LGBTQ community. If they see more firefighters that look like them, they will want to choose the Austin Fire Department as a career as well. Yeah, it doesn't matter if they're capable of doing the job. It's just that they're LGBT or whatever. That's all that matters. Anyway, so once again, DEI rears its ugly head with regard to the Texas flood and the lack of response after the destruction of the flood. So not too surprising, is it? And I had mentioned here on this Nick Fuentes post here, citizenship revoked for anti-Semites. You thought I was joking, didn't you? You want to see the U.S. Department of Justice Civil Division memo that just came out on June 11th, a month ago? From Brett Shumate, Assistant Attorney General, to Attorney General Blondie, combating discriminatory practices and policies, Section 1 here, ending anti-Semitism, Section 2 here, protecting women and children, Section 3, ending sanctuary jurisdictions, prioritizing denaturalization. You thought I was joking, didn't you? So let's start with Part 5 here. The Department of Justice may institute civil proceedings to revoke a person's United States citizenship if an individual either illegally procured naturalization or procured naturalization by concealment of a material fact or by willful misrepresentation. The benefits of civil denaturalization include the government's ability to revoke the citizenship of individuals who engage in the commission of war crimes, extrajudicial killings, or other serious human rights abuses, to remove naturalized criminals, gang members, or indeed any individuals convicted of crimes who pose an ongoing threat to the United States, and to prevent convicted terrorists from returning to U.S. soil or traveling international on a U.S. passport. At a fundamental level, it also supports the overall integrity of the naturalization program by ensuring that all those who unlawfully procured citizenship, including those who obtained it through fraud or concealment of material information, do not maintain the benefits of unlawful procurement. Well, that right there doesn't sound that terrible, but the reason it's on this memo is that it is linked here to anti-Semitism. On January 9th this year, Trump issued Executive Order 14188, Additional Measures to Combat Anti-Semitism, which established the, quote, policy of the United States to combat anti-Semitism vigorously, using all available and appropriate legal tools to prosecute, remove, or otherwise hold accountable the perpetrators of unlawful anti-Semitic harassment and violence. So there you go. Anti-Semitism, and you could lose your citizenship. on this DOJ, Trump DOJ memorandum, June 11th, 2025. Isn't that lovely? So if you disagree with what Israel's doing, they might revoke your citizenship. Wow, that's where we're going. Anyway, yeah, we'll link to this in the Substack post, but it's on justice.gov. So it's a legitimate document. I'm not just making this stuff up. All right, watch. Investigative journalist explains why Epstein case will never progress. They're not going to give an inch. Journalist Nick Bryant notes in this viral clip from the Sean Ryan podcast that the Jeffrey Epstein case is being covered up by the federal government and Trump. I'm adding that. And will never progress because it would destroy their entire operational system. Epstein had cameras in all of his homes. Epstein was definitely a blackmail artist. The government wants to make sure that that does not come out. A huge part of our political system is predicated on blackmail. Yeah, and it sounds like from the stuff I read earlier, they have pretty much everybody. Prince Andrew, free to travel abroad as the FBI ends its probe into Epstein's links. So there he is. Prince Andrew, the crazy king's brother, can finally end his self-imposed travel ban after a leaked memo revealed that the FBI is closing its investigation into Epstein's links. The disgraced Duke of York, 65, has left the UK once in the last 6 years over fears of an arrest, civil lawsuits, or being subpoenaed. Now it appears as though the scandal-scarred prince, who has been kept at arm's length from the royal fold, is able to venture out of the UK without fear of repercussions. There he is with his meaningless medals and awards and stuff. So anyway, it looks like Prince Andrew is breathing a sigh of relief now. And new DOJ dropped investigation into Pfizer for possible bribery after Pam Bondi, who served as a consultant for Pfizer, became the Attorney General. So another reason they brought Bondi in is she used to work for Pfizer. She was a consultant for Pfizer. She's now Attorney General, and therefore the DOJ, her DOJ, has dropped the investigation into Pfizer for possible bribery, according to this. So it just gets weirder and weirder, doesn't it? So here's a whole tweet about this. This guy's put together. All right, and then this one, back to engineering the weather, I guess, here for a sec. Red alert, Floodgate America, 256 warnings in 33 states, 6 days of chaos. This was engineered. This was a test. HARP in action, question mark. So you can see all of the affected areas in red. Over 256 flash flood warnings across 33 U.S. states in 6 days. Not a hurricane, not nature, but a coordinated, devastating flood pattern that points to intentional manipulation. While FEMA went silent and alerts failed, HARP is back in the conversation. Was this a natural disaster or a live atmospheric weapons test against the American people? This wasn't climate. This was control. A nation flooded by design. So anyway, probably enough on that, but there's a whole article here on how HARP may have been involved in this whole weird weather anomalies that we've had over the last week or 10 days or whatever. Anyway, there's that one. And then this is one I had kind of bookmarked earlier and just didn't mention it. This doesn't really have a time stamp, like it doesn't really mean anything as far as a piece of news. It's just an important piece of information. If you're from BC, if you're from British Columbia, this is something that you'll definitely want to take a look at if you're not aware of this, which I know many of my Canadian friends are certainly aware of this kind of stuff because you guys live in quite the tyranny up there. But British Columbia is the global test case for land seizure. So this is all about how they're going to seize control over private land in British Columbia. Bill 7 is now the law. Part 4 could make government control of private land permanent by the fall of 2025. So how about that? British Columbia, the first domino. Emergency powers without emergencies. So that's the whole thing. It's kind of like the whole COVID thing. Bill 7 is what this is called. Bill 7 radically redefines what constitutes an emergency. It expands the list to include not only natural disasters, but also climate modeling, cyber threats, pandemics, critical incidents, and anything that could disrupt social cohesion. These emergencies do not have to occur. They only need to be predicted, and they can come take your land. This is one of the most dangerous elements of Bill 7. The government no longer needs actual evidence that something is happening. It only needs a model, a forecast, or a simulation that suggests something might happen at some point in the future. That prediction alone can be used to declare a provincial state of emergency. Seizure of land, homes, infrastructure, and personal property. Occupy private dwellings or buildings for shelter or storage. Extract water, fuel, food, and other supplies. Remove trees or destroy structures. In other words, they only need to be predicted. No damage needs to exist. No fires need to burn. No floodwaters need to rise. If a government agency or artificial intelligence model predicts that there may be a future risk, the province can exercise full emergency powers without court orders, without public input, and without due process. This is not governance. This is preemptive expropriation legalized under the banner of safety. It's a shift from responding to real crises to managing projected threats, a move that removes all checks and balances on the state. So this is Bill 7 and property confiscation. So this whole article here is about Bill 7. So this is something to take a look at if you are in Canada especially. But, you know, Canada is a Commonwealth country headed up by none other than King Charles III. And they want to bring this everywhere. If he is indeed going to be the biblical Antichrist, don't you see something like this being enacted worldwide at some point? Anyway, British Columbia is the global test case for land seizure. I thought that was pretty interesting. So again, we'll link to this in the Substack post, but it's on a website called itstartswithgold.com is where it is. Anyways, yeah, so stay tuned for the Substack post on that. I thought this one's kind of interesting. We've talked about Brigitte Macron often here on the show. Brigitte Macron loses in court to reporters saying she's a man. French First Lady, you could put that in quotes, French First Lady Brigitte Macron has lost a legal case that she brought against two women who claimed she was born a male, a claim originally amplified by Candace Owens. Jimmy Dore and Kurt Metzger discussed the court's overturning a prior ruling that fined the women, suggesting their claims, though controversial, were not legally punishable. They note that Macron's relationship with Emmanuel Macron began when he was 15 years old, and she was in her 40s, which many would consider grooming. They also point out that her alleged brother, Jean-Michel, has never been publicly seen, fueling speculation that the French government and media have attempted to suppress. Yes, that's right. So the story here is that Jean-Michel is actually the male who then had a trans surgery and is now her. That's why no one has seen him since 1977 or whatever. Anyway, here's a short video on that. Won't bother playing it tonight just for lack of time, but it is a clip from Jimmy Dore's show, and they do a good job explaining what's going on. Total craziness. Now, ForbiddenKnowledge.tv, that is where that one was. And then there's several good articles on here, videos embedded. A couple of them that I pulled up. I've played, I think one time, long time ago, played a Sabrina Wallace clip, and it's one of those things where it's so deep, it's almost hard to really grasp what she's saying. It's so technically difficult to understand, especially if you don't come into listening to her without some sort of background in technology. And so let me just read this quickly, not the whole thing, but just the first paragraph or two, just to give you an idea of what this is about. Now, this is a video. It's a 16-minute video. It's not very long. Sabrina Wallace posted 2 short, important live streams last month that deal with the misconceptions being propagated about the Nishikajnivoks and how these relate to geoengineering, aka chemtrails, and to the advancing agenda of the brain-computer interface. The misconceptions that we have about these things are rooted in the fundamentally deterministic, mechanistic propaganda of the scientific establishment. Our most basic scientific assumptions are the product of a long-term project of narrative control crafted to constrain human understanding of the phenomenological world and who we are as spiritual beings and about what life is. Our understanding of the fundamental aspects of our existence, atoms, molecules, DNA, and viruses, are essentially limited hangouts and fake news. How about that? And it's talking about a Substack that she recommends. Sabrina explains that the main thing from which we are being distracted is the bioelectrical nature of life, saying it's funny how they claim to encrypt a message on DNA when the DNA code itself is just ciphered bioelectricity voltage language. So she's one that talks about the W-band, or the wireless body area network. So if you guys haven't ever heard of her, she's at times kind of a little bit difficult to follow, but she is really interesting. I'll give her that. Sabrina Wallace. So this is actually an embedded video or two here on ForbiddenKnowledgeTV.net. So probably worth a watch, talking about your cells are the chip. Your cells are the chip. And a few other little mind-blowing technical things that you might want to take a look at. Certainly worth checking out. And then let's see here. Leo Hohmann's Substack, just a couple of the headlines here. Trump threatens big surprise for Putin as Russia shuts down internet. New economic sanctions and massive drone and missile attack against Moscow reportedly in the works, risking yet another escalation towards World War III. Yes, that could be in the works as soon as tomorrow. That's something people are talking about potentially this week. So keep an eye on that. What happens with Russia and an escalation in insanity and tensions between the U.S. and Russia. Trump's EPA chief clears the air on chemtrails and geoengineering in the interest of total transparency, which is a total joke. But anyway, that is a Leo Hohmann Substack as well. Touched on that earlier. Trump drops the ball on the Epstein client list, outraging his base in the process. I don't think he dropped the ball at all. I think he spiked it, don't you? Just like he spiked the whole story. Trump mocks reporter asking about Epstein. Tone-deaf president caves to powerful interests in the case of British royal family. Is this a case of the British royal family working its magic behind the scenes? Again, British royal family. Now, who is that? Who is that? I know, it just keeps coming back to him. Let's see here. Wine Press News, their Substack. White House posts a meme of Trump as a symbol of hope as Superman, as Trump denies the Epstein connection again. Yeah, there's a... you can see it here. A meme of Trump as Superman. I guess there's a new Superman movie. Yeah, anyway. Must be about Trump. All right, and then Gateway Pundit. Some of the top articles I pulled up here. Damaged European Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen survived a motion of censure over Pfizergate, but now is in a weakened position to negotiate EU budget. Yeah, she was put up against a vote of, let's see if it says here. European Commission survived the motion of censure. Okay. I was thinking it was a vote of no confidence. But she did win this so that she was not removed. So this is one of the crazy globalist people hanging out with Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum. Well, this is uber-liberal globalist Ursula von der Leyen is weaker today than she was yesterday, according to the Gateway Pundit here. The German European Commissioner, so she's the German EU Commissioner, did escape political annihilation by the hands of the MEPs, and with a sizable margin at that. But a careful look at the numbers reveals tough times ahead for the leader in her effort to implement her maximalist globalist agenda. So she was not removed, however, they're saying here that she's weakened, which I don't know. So anyway, that is a Gateway Pundit article. That just happened within the last few days. Breaking: Kentucky state troopers shot, 2 dead, multiple victims injured in Lexington church shooting. So this was earlier today. Suspect shot at Kentucky State Police trooper before fleeing to a nearby church, where additional shootings left multiple people injured and 2 dead on Sunday. So a church shooting in Kentucky, Lexington. I don't know if you guys heard about that. Anyway, kind of crazy. Another church shooting. This happened a few weeks ago, didn't it? Whoa. Trump gets ratioed for the first time after weighing in on Bongino clash over handling of Epstein documents. Yeah, the Gateway Pundit, they're huge Trump fans there, so they're going to be rooting for anything he does and says. So it's something to keep in mind when looking at any of their articles, but they're also super pro-Israel, so it kind of goes hand in hand, doesn't it? Breaking: airplane crashes at London Southend Airport. So we mentioned this earlier. Looking to see if this has anything about... Here, according to the Metro, the plane involved was a small Beech B-200. It can reportedly carry 13 passengers and 2 crew members. Well, it doesn't say. We can confirm there has been a serious incident at the airport. It still doesn't say if there was any people hurt, though. No one knows. Maybe the airplane was flying itself. It was an automated airplane. I don't know. Huge Secret Service knew there was a credible threat against Trump's life 10 days before the Butler rally, which we are at the 1-year mark, where Trump was shot and innocent supporter was killed, did not share with staff on the ground. Oh, wow. So, yeah. New Government Accountability Office report reveals that the Secret Service during Biden's presidency did not alert the team responsible for securing Trump's July 13th rally, where an assassination attempt was made despite being made aware of the threat against Trump's life 10 days prior. But, yeah, they just thought they would keep it to themselves and not bother mentioning it. So that is a Gateway Pundit article. And this one, I thought we might watch a little bit of this, but I don't think, just for the sake of time tonight, we won't. But I will link to this, or you guys can look it up. It's pretty touching, actually, this little guy. Watch. Child wakes up after a skateboarding accident, says that he sees Jesus and his deceased father. And he's literally crying through this whole thing, talking to Jesus and telling him he's so beautiful. Says, well, good luck getting through this one with dry eyes. A mother took an incredible video of her son waking up in the hospital after a skateboard accident, and it's going viral for good reason. In the video, which was later posted by a friend, he looks up and says that he can see Jesus and his deceased father, who apparently died of cancer a few years ago. He talks to his dad and talks to Jesus, constantly remarking about how beautiful Jesus is. He has fire eyes, the kid says. It recalls John's vision of Jesus in Revelation 19, where he describes Jesus saying his eyes were as a flame of fire. He begins talking with his dad, saying how much he misses him, talking about how beautiful heaven is. So I won't play it, but it is really touching. You can see that the kid is absolutely mesmerized by what he's seeing. And I don't know how he is asleep and he has his eyes wide open, but I don't know. I mean, personally, I think that he really is seeing something. When you watch the video, you'll probably agree with that. But anyway, it's on Not the Bee. And then one more from this same site. Today, I found out that Gen Z doesn't know how to answer the phone. Did you know this? Gen Z folks. Sorry, but this story is going to be a rant. I just learned this is a thing. The latest generation to enter adulthood doesn't know how to answer the phone. So according to this person here on X, I'm a recruiter, so I do a ton of phone interviews, and something that I've noticed about Gen Zers specifically is that a lot of them answer the phone and don't say anything. Like, I can hear their breathing and the background noise, but they wait for you to say hello first. You call them, they pick up the phone, and they sit there and they wait for you to say hello. They're just breathing into the phone and not saying anything, like a freaking serial killer. Please read the rest of this guy's explanation before you protest. For clarification, the candidates have self-scheduled these calls, and I'm calling at the exact time that they chose, and also receive a reminder email about an hour beforehand. They also have my number ahead of time, so they know who's calling. They know it isn't spam. They've scheduled the call. They just pick up the phones, and they sit there waiting for you to talk. Do these young people not know how insane this is? Why can't you speak first? You literally called. That is the that's the Gen Zer post here. There are 16,000 likes on this reply. Well, there's 20 actually. That is not how phone calls work. We established this with the first freaking phone call from Alexander Graham Bell. Isn't it a universal law that the person who's doing the calling should be the one to say hello? No, it's not a universal rule. It is the opposite of the universal rule. Do these kids even have parents? Yeah. So the kids here, the Gen Zers, think that if you call somebody, you need to be the person to say hello. That is not how it works, is it? If somebody calls you, if your phone rings, what is the first thing you do? Do you just answer it and don't say anything, or do you say hello? I always say hello. Always. We have an entire generation who never learned ring, ring, hello. Wow. I wasn't aware of this. I didn't know if you guys were either. There's quite a bit here. I'm officially frightened for the future, it says. Yeah, anyway, that's kind of a fun one on Not the Bee. And then just heading through these last few articles real quick so we can wrap it up. It's getting late. Bannon says the GOP could lose 40 seats in the midterms over Epstein. I don't think he's wrong. The GOP could lose dozens of seats in the 2026 midterms if the Trump administration continues to mishandle its disclosure of information related to Epstein. Bannon has warned. Bannon's criticism comes after the Department of Justice and FBI released a memo on Monday that claimed Epstein did not keep a client list and committed suicide rather than being murdered. I think he was neither. Yeah, so he's saying it could lose 10% of the MAGA movement, 40 seats in 2026. He might be right. I don't know. Senator Lindsey Graham, Lady G, says Trump will have weapons flowing to Ukraine at record levels in the coming days. So this is what's been talked about in the last day or so. During appearance on CBS News Face the Nation this morning, Senator Graham says he believes Trump is preparing to send a huge influx of weapons to Ukraine in the coming days, which, by the way, they are giving them more money. Yet more money. Yeah. This is talking about $4 billion here. More money and weapons going to Ukraine. That's what we voted for, wasn't it? Maybe not. 6 killed after over 620 drones and missiles unleashed on Ukraine overnight. The reason I pulled this up is we know that Russia is absolutely hammering Ukraine. There's really no question about that. Russia launched over 620 drones and long-range missiles in another massive overnight attack, numbers which come close to the record-setting assault from last week, which consisted of over 700 projectiles. So they are pummeling the Ukrainian forces here. The Trump administration has shifted in recent days to claiming that defending Ukraine is America first. No, that would be Ukraine first, which is the absolute opposite messaging the White House was advancing earlier in Trump's term. Yes, and during the entire campaign. But what I thought was strange was, I guess this picture kind of surprised me. What do you find odd about this picture? I'll give you a minute. See if anybody posted in chat. Let me start by saying obviously two cars that have been exploded by probably a drone or something. Well, the one on the left, you can kind of tell, just based on what's left of it, looks like a more modern car. I mean, you can tell just by the wheel. Clearly, pretty modern car. It's probably I would say the driver's side rear wheel there that we're seeing. So we're seeing the back end of the car, and then there's not much left of it, and it's completely gone. While the other car right next to it is almost completely intact. But look what it is. I mean, what is that thing? It's like a 1940s Hudson or Packard or something like that. What in the world is going on, and why are they driving Hudsons or Packards in Ukraine? Look at that. The bumper is still shiny. It looks like you could just buff it out and maybe replace the glass in the back window and you'd be fine. That just amazes me, just because, the car on the left is completely trashed and gone. The car on the right is kind of scratched up a little bit. You could replace the glass and drive it off. And kind of strange, though, that they're driving Packards or whatever that is over there in Ukraine. Very strange. But they don't mention the cars, I guess, in this article. I just thought that was weird. Anyway, and then a few articles on modernity.news. Just go through the headlines here real quick. You guys can look at them if you're interested. Megyn Kelly obliterates passive-aggressive Chelsea Clinton. No one wants your family of grifters anywhere near those suffering in Texas. Oof, is the response here. Yeah, did you hear that the Clinton Global Initiative is going to go help, I put that in big air quotes, help the people in Texas, which means steal all their money. And Megyn Kelly is saying no thanks. Biden's doctor pleaded the fifth. Joe Biden's White House physician has refused to testify before the Oversight Committee as part of the investigation into his mental health decline. In response to being subpoenaed, Dr. Kevin O'Connor has pleaded the fifth, citing doctor-patient privilege. House Oversight Chairman James Comer responded to development by stating it's now clear that there was a conspiracy to cover up President Biden's cognitive decline. Yes, and also to cover up the fact that he wasn't actually the president. It was whoever was running the auto pen, and none of them were elected. And I thought this was good news. The Lord's Prayer still is the most recognized text in English. It would seem that quite a chunk of the population that can't face going to church for whatever reason is still sneakily praying on the quiet, praying on the down low. So I guess that's good news. The Lord's Prayer is still the most recognized text in English. There you go. I did not know that. And then headlines on vaccineimpact.com. More with Epstein here. And let's see here. Are people finally waking up to the fact that the U.S. is run by pedophiles? And the Epstein financial system, that's one of them. Has the AI apocalypse arrived? Tens of thousands being laid off in big tech. AI has to either replace them or AI spending must stop. So that's the top headlines here, top three anyway, on Vaccine Impact. And then this one was brought to my attention. A friend of mine sent this to me on Facebook the other day. And guess what? They're doing a practice burning of one of the red heifers who isn't qualified to be the red heifer. So did you guys know about this? Practice burning of red heifer carried out. At first I had my doubts. You can tell it's clearly an animal, and you can tell it was clearly a cow from that matter, for that point, but I wasn't sure that it was actually what it was being portrayed as. But according to Israel 365 News, that is what happened. Last Tuesday, a practice red heifer burning was conducted. A video from the drill was published on Israel National News. That's the website, israelnationalnews.com. In the drill, a red heifer that had been housed at Shiloh was prepared and burned on a pyre of wood as preparation for the possibility of an actual ceremony in the future. The heifer was not suitable for the actual ceremony, as it had been inspected by the rabbis of the Temple Institute and judged to have non-red hairs, thereby disqualifying it. The heifer was burned on a pyre of wood precisely as specified in Jewish sources. So they are sacrificing animals on wooden pyres in Israel. They're doing it. The practice burning was carried out at an undisclosed location in Samaria. The actual red heifer may only be burned at a specific location on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. So they don't really have to have the temple built to do this. And this practice one was the sacrifice of one of the non-red hairs, one of the heifers that did not have the perfect red hairs and had a few gray ones or other colors, gray or brown or something. So how about that? Wouldn't you like that? If you have any gray hairs in your head and you get sacrificed instead of somebody who has pure red hair. That would have been sacrificed a while back. Anyways, I just thought I would bring that to your attention because, yes, they are doing practice red heifer sacrifices now. It's the first time I've heard of that. But yeah, somewhere in Samaria. So we'll see where it goes. Obviously, in my opinion, this red heifer thing isn't really, I mean, obviously it's important to the Jews, to the practicing, Orthodox Jews and whoever that will be doing the sacrificing. But it seems to me like they can get a red heifer anytime they want by genetic engineering. I personally think that's probably how these showed up all at the same time all from the same farm. There were like 5 of them that showed up at once. Now I guess there's only 4. So anyway, yeah, I would say that they can pretty much use genetic engineering and have red heifers anytime they want. It remains to be seen whether or not, they can only be a certain age. And obviously, this one found out the hard way that it didn't have the exact hairs as it should. By having some non-red hairs, it cost it its life. But anyway, very strange. Anyway, the red heifer burning has already commenced. All right, and then GeoWatch for this week. We have Global Alert News. This was an interesting headline. We added this at the last minute on the broadcast, but it's so key. How do we get a dozen 1,000-year floods in 3 days? What caused over a dozen 1,000-year floods in just 3 days? That's 2 different headlines, AccuWeather and Fox News. And in the meantime, other regions of North America are being baked and burned to the ground. Yeah, say a prayer for Mr. Dane, if you would, because he's got fires all around him again, certainly within a few miles. He can see them. I've talked to him a couple times, and yeah, he says he can see them. So, but this week's GeoWatch Global Alert News is a really good one, so make sure you guys check that out. And there's an interesting story, like a personal anecdotal story that he told, I thought was really touching at the end of the broadcast. I don't remember exactly where it started, but it's 40-some minutes into the broadcast, if I remember right. And it's a really touching story about him being out in the wilderness and encountering a bear and all this stuff. And all that to say, the area where all of the story kind of takes place isn't one of the areas that has now been completely burned up in these wildfires. So definitely go check that out. If you missed the show, it is embedded here on the site, geoengineeringwatch.org. So there you go on that. And then just go through some of the posts I did this week on the Diamond Report on X. we'll just do this quickly. Every time the government investigates itself, charges are never filed. That is fascinating. Fascinating, yes. It's all just a conspiracy, right? So here is all of the people with the one eye. And it's all, I guess, celebrities, although I don't know very many of them. But you can see there's a bunch of them. All right, there's a couple people I recognize. Anyway, yeah, they have the one eye thing going. But it's all a coincidence, and it doesn't mean anything. Pay no attention. I thought this one was good. We're going to release the Epstein list. She starts putting her makeup on. It's on my desk right now. We just need more time. There is no Epstein list. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is the gif of who actually were in there taking care of Mr. Epstein. You can see him dancing around here. That's pretty well done, actually. Probably a AI-made video, I'm guessing. You can see they're having a big time. I believe Lindsey Graham may be leading a double life as Netanyahu's wife. Now it all makes sense. They do look a little bit alike. This is Bibi's wife, and this is Lady G. Epstein didn't employ himself. Yeah. In the Bible, demons refer to themselves as they, them, we, us. Did you know that? Oh, yeah, this is one of the Epstein victims. She's really interesting to listen to. Owen Schroyer interviewed her on his show. What else we have? Oh, yeah. Christian Zionism, the belief that God favors a group that rejects Christ and has given them a land where they're allowed to kill, rape, and torture without judgment. So there you go. If you wanted a definition of Christian Zionism, there you have it. Kind of sums it up. This one is all music, so I can't really play it, but it's pretty funny. Talking about Gavin Newsom and is he gay? And I'll leave it up to you guys to to determine whether or not he might be, but it sure looks like it. Yes, he looks super gay. Anyway, not really new news, I guess. How the elites felt after the FBI concluded that there was no Epstein list. Just watch Bush's face. Directed by Michael Bay, who also, by the way, is on that list. The FBI can tell you the name of every January 6th conspirator, but not a single name from Epstein's client list. Yeah. And last but not least, Bart Simpson here says Epstein's client's government, obviously he's blind, and a $600 Venmo transaction, they can see every detail of that. That sums it up, doesn't it? Anyways, that is the Diamond Report for this week. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And I guess we can close with a quick little synopsis of things. But yeah, sign up for the Substack if you're not already, please. Totally free. And you can do so there, diamonddisc.substack.com. Drop your email address in there. And I guess Miss Emily's probably posted a few links in the chat. And Subscribestar is the way that you could support the show. You can do that through Substack or through Subscribestar. So thank you guys for supporting the show and helping me pay my bills and keep the show on the air. It's all out of pocket, really. So I've got a total of, I think, 16 people helping. We're back up one now. We have 6 on Subscribestar again and 10, I think, total on Substack. So thank you guys for helping me with the show. And then here's the store, of course. Different options, mugs and hats and shirts and stuff like that for the Diamond Report, supporting the show and what I'm doing. So thank you guys for doing that and for sharing the show. That's super important. That's probably the best thing you can do, and it's totally free. So it's priced just right. End Times Dates on YouTube. Take it to the Lord in prayer. End Times Dates. And then also on these other platforms, Diamond Disc, pretty much everywhere else. On Rumble and BitChute and Brighteon. And then Band, it's actually under the Diamond Report on there. So if you're on band.us, band.us, if you're on there, just search for the Diamond Report and you can join the group for free. Again, priced just right. And I guess that's it. Looking to see what else. Oh, yeah, I had one other thing here. I wanted to mention this. I haven't finished watching this yet. I'm only 32 minutes in, but it's pretty good. Tim Cohen talking about... it's a brand new video here, pretty new, I guess, from 3 days ago, talking about King Charles and his becoming the biblical Antichrist, and he goes into a lot of details in this video. Certainly worth a watch. I will link to this in the Substack post that I put out as well, but you guys can find it. It's on his author Tim Cohen YouTube channel. He puts out some pretty good information. He's super pro-Israel, which I am not, but he is definitely a diehard as far as that goes. I disagree with that aspect of it, but I do like a lot of what he talks about, and he seems to be pretty much spot on a lot of the stuff that he says biblically. I think is so that's good news. So, anyways, take a look at that if you guys want. I know he's kind of rubbed some people the wrong way as far as his personality goes, but I do think biblically he's pretty much spot on, and he agrees with a lot of the stuff that I've been saying as well. I mean, he doesn't know me from Adam, but I'm just saying we agree on a lot of the same things, looking at the end times dates timeline, going back to this timeline, which we haven't really talked about in a long time on this show. But this is something that I made multiple videos about and explained it in the Take It to the Lord in Prayer end times dates videos on the various channels. And a lot of the stuff that Tim Cohen talks about actually fits in nicely with the things that I've been saying since 2019. So if you guys are interested, feel free to take a look at that. It's on my YouTube channel and Rumble channel and various other places. So anyways, thank you guys for being here tonight. I just really appreciate it. It's 1:12 a.m. It's getting kind of late. Today is officially the 14th, but the next show will be the 20th. Sunday the 20th at 10 p.m. Central. So we will do it again then. I hope you guys have a blessed week this week. And it's everything that you hoped and dreamed it would be. And again, keep praying that we don't have World War III, because there are some people out there that really want us to have that. They really want us to go through the thermonuclear experience. And I personally am not looking forward to that. So good night to everybody. And I hope you guys have a blessed week again this week. And feel free to stay in touch. And we'll see you guys next week. We'll do it again then. Love you all. Talk to you again real soon.